Hello, hello.
We're
We li-
live.
we're live, pal. La- Ladies and gentlemen, what's good, y'all? Even though it's been a week, it's the Chillmeister Chris Gary. It's Jay Wolf. This is another special edition of Focus Fights Audio Presents, where we put over not what happened at that Riyadh Saudi shit show from last night in Los Angeles, but about the epicness that was the RIZIN Fighting Federation that took place over the last. I mean, let's just say it. It happened a week ago, but we're still talking about it. It was pretty epic. Let's just say that. I mean, Jay Wolf, what were your overall thoughts about Super RIZIN 3 before we just get down to the nitty gritty on this?
Amazing show. I mean, we spoke, both of us were on the We Are Rising podcast earlier this week, and we're discussing about it and just can't say enough good things about it. Just absolutely loved it. Even though there was barely any superior rule set, that's what bugged me the most about it. I'm worried that, you know, Drew has a theory of why they're not doing a much superior rule set. Hopefully it's incorrect, but I mean, imagine how much better that show would have been if there was more superior rule set action. I think it would have been a clear-cut event of the year candidate. I mean, event of the year, not just the candidate. I think it was an event of the year candidate, but if it had some more superior rule set action in it, I think it would have been event of the year, hands down. Only way to beat it would have been New Year's Eve collaboration mega event. So it was just a sensational show. Oh, let's remind people of the stats too. Over 48,000 in attendance. Sold tickets, 48,000 plus sold tickets. Who knows about how many pay-per-view buys? And remember, this time there was multiple ways for international audiences to buy the pay-per-view. I'm talking about on RIZIN.tv and Abima Live went international this time. So, and that's not the Japanese pay-per-views. They're $50 USD each time, right? So who knows how much they made on pay-per-view as well. And also, just the fights were sensational, and the coverage was massive over in Japan, over in Asia actually, because of Manny Pacquiao was on it. But funny how there was minimal coverage over here. I can't stand the fake news media. It just pisses me off to no end that, you know, such a massive show.
It's not the so-called fake news media. I mean, even though it's basically the mainstream fight media that just don't care, it's basically the fact that not a lot of people cover RIZIN over here on these shores. Not a lot of people really get off into RIZIN like we do, you know?
I think it's on purpose, though. I think it's on purpose. I think it's tribal. I think it's protecting the UFC, the brand. They're being on top. You know, you can't show another show beating the snot out of UFC attendance wise. Fights wise, I mean, it was on the same night as a UFC pay-per-view, right? And that UFC it was who was that in that pay-per-view? It was Aspinall and I even forgot who he fought.
Aspinall versus Blades.
Yes, thank you. And the whole event was ass. Let's just put it that way. Compared to the Epic RIZIN Super RIZIN 3 event. Super RIZIN 3 won the weekend and beat a UFC pay-per-view action-wise without barely any superior rule set as well, I might add, which is incredible. So, you know, the mainstream media can't have the regular folk, the regular fans know about a superior organization, basically, with superior rule set, superior crowds, superior fights. I mean, everything about the Epic RIZIN is better than the UFC, and it beat a UFC pay-per-view. That's what I think. My theory of why the fake news mainstream, quote unquote, mainstream media doesn't want to cover it, and because there was plenty of stuff on it for Western mainstream media. I'm not going to call it mainstream, the fake news media to cover. Manny Pacquiao was on there. Ryan Garcia was there. You know, normally that would be massive coverage over here, right? I thought for sure it was going to get some kind of coverage. Nothing. I mean, barely. I think we only got like a results article or two, like on SureDog or something, right? Just pitiful coverage. It's embarrassing. We're the only ones that give coverage to the Epic RIZIN, and rightfully so. This was an event of the year candidate, a sensational event, and it deserves a lot. That's why I'm so thankful to be on this show right here. Focus Fights Audio with Jay Christian Gary. and this is the long form review of the Super RIZIN 3 event. So
Yeah.
I'm just thankful to be here, and I can't wait to get into the show with you.
Yeah, but Jay, here's the thing also when it comes down to the fact of the lack of media coverage. All they're going to care about is the fact that Ryan Garcia was on the show and acting, I guess you would say, cordial, as opposed to being a maniacal douchebag who has a racist overtone. And all they're going to care about really is Manny Pacquiao and nothing else. They don't care about the fact that out of the 11 fights on this card, 7 of them ended in finishes. 5 first-round finishes, by the way. They're not going to care about the fact that in the first 2 fights alone, I think they ended on average of about 5 minutes in total? I mean, they're not...
Yeah, and the decisions were bangers. Arguably a Fight of the Year candidate and a BKFC Fight of the Year candidate, bare knuckle Fight of the Year candidate, right? So even the decisions were absolute bangers on this card. Exactly. So it's inexcusable for them not to cover it. It's really inexcusable. It pisses me off to no end. I mean, I can give them a little bit of leeway when it's just a numbered event or a landmark event where it's supposed to be smaller in stature. But this said, okay, the UFC just signed Kai Asakura. They just poached one of our top flyweight prospects, Temerov, right? So the UFC is obviously paying attention to the Epic RIZIN. Why not the quote-unquote mainstream media? I can't, man. It pisses me off to no end, Jay Krish. I can't stand the fake news media. I'm calling them the fake news because they don't. Any real news, real journalism would cover an event as massive as Super RIZIN 3. And let's be real. It was massive. Probably the biggest mixed martial arts event of the year so far. Probably the only thing that's going to beat it is New Year's Eve, the collaboration mega event. I mean, and I can't wait to talk to you about that. Did you see the news that happened? The news did you see in the RIZIN Discord? We were talking about the breaking news yesterday, where
I am obviously subbed into the RIZIN Fighting Federation fan Discord, which you can check out in the description of this podcast. But still, though, when it came down to the news of Ramzan Temerov being signed by the UFC, I mean, I know you think it's controversial, but when it comes down to that, he was going to be poached by the UFC one way or another.
I don't know. I think he should have won a title first, if he could have even won a title first. I'm just surprised that they poached him so fast. And that's not the news I was talking about. I was talking about collaboration event. We'll get to that in a second. I want to touch on this Temerov news that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. The UFC's flyweight division is, I mean, I guess they need contenders, but I think that's where Kai Asakura is going to fight, right? And the point is that they didn't need to poach this guy so soon. Why are they poaching Temerov so soon? It's because he was emerging as a flyweight contender for the Epic RIZIN, and they wanted to get him before RIZIN put on a fantastic flyweight Grand Prix, and put over Kyoji Horiguchi even more, who for some reason the UFC won't, because they don't want to pay the man what he's worth, basically, why they won't re-sign Kai Asakura. I mean, Kyoji Horiguchi. They signed Kai Asakura for a bargain because he really wanted to go to UFC and try to win a title, so that's why they got him. But I mean, I guess that could be part of the reason why they picked up Temerov now, because he's cheaper now than he would be if he won a Grand Prix title or won the outright flyweight title, or beat some high-profile opponents in RIZIN, I guess. So that could be why. But to me, it's odd. After just 2 fights, it just, man, they never poach anybody else like this. I know Drew was saying that's the consequence of being too nice, like Sakaki Barca, of letting Kai Asakura go to the UFC. But I also think it's because the UFC is trying to hurt the Epic RIZIN and take away, top up. They better protect Shadalayev. I mean, Shadalayev, and some others, top prospects that are still in the Epic RIZIN. They need to either, sign a long-term contract or start a Grand Prix in their division to get them, for sure for 3 fights, right? So it's just something they need to prevent UFC from poaching these fighters, top prospects, because it's clear that the UFC is going after them, even if they only got a couple fights. So, but let me get back to the other news we're talking about. What I want to say that was in the RIZIN Discord, that was some of the top combat sports news. I personally, in my opinion, pertaining to the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event, Patricio Pound for Pound Pitbull and Chihiro Suzuki, what I like to call the rematch, that looks like it's going to be happening, probably main eventing the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event on New Year's Eve, because
it's going to be main eventing the Bellator portion. That's going to probably be on earlier in the evening.
I don't think so. I think it's going to be main. I think it's going to be another Bellator versus RIZIN card, just like the one they had before. Remember on New Year's Eve where they had a 5 versus 5?
But Jay, here's the thing. I don't think they're going to do that 5 versus 5 stuff. I think what they might do is have, because when it comes down to the whole Bellator RIZIN thing, we all knew that something was up when Bellator announced that they were going to be, earlier on this year, we all knew something was up when Bellator announced that they were going to be allegedly doing a show on New Year's Eve in Saitama, Japan. You saw the
and they had the graphic, that said December 31st, Saitama Super Arena, Japan, and then they quickly took it away, trying to keep an air of mystery about it. But it was too late. Internet's forever. We got it, screenshot it, and that's what pretty much kicked off what you're talking about. But when I'm talking about the news that happened, shout out to the Combat Sports Today news family and guys like Izzy Doa that are guests on this show before. They had a tweet saying that Aaron Pico, who the fans, look at that banner. Yeah, fantastic. Combat Sports Today news. This is where we got this breaking news from yesterday. And fantastic. They're a real news organization. They actually give coverage to the Epic, and they're international in Europe and stuff as well. They give coverage to and Izzy Doa, one fantastic guest on this show frequently. Just fantastic. The Combat Sports Today news family is fantastic. Just big shout out to them. Anyways, they were the ones that broke the news about Aaron Pico is fighting the PFL champion, Pineda, I think it is.
Jesus Pinedo.
Yes, Jesus Pineda. Exactly. Thank you. And that, remember, people were saying that Pico was going to be fighting Patricio next for the featherweight title in Bellator, and that's why the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event couldn't happen versus Chihiro. But now that we know that Pico is fighting Pineda in probably a number one contender fight, which I think is fantastic. That's what I've been saying since the beginning should have happened. And since we know that's happening now, that means that Patricio Pound for Pound Pitbull is cleared to fight Chihiro on New Year's Eve. So, it's just the stars have aligned, and it's going to happen. Don Davis, shout out to him. As much shit as we give him, he didn't fumble the bag on this one. It doesn't appear so. It looks like it's going to happen. And I think it's going to be a 5 versus 5 event because, remember, also we saw Kyoji Horiguchi, speaking to him, tweet out about he's going to have a rematch coming up. Who could that rematch be against? I'm guessing possibly against Sergio Pettis for the flyweight title this time. And I think it might be on that Bellator versus RIZIN portion of the card. I think it's going to be headlined by Chihiro Suzuki and Patricio Pound for Pound Pitbull for the Bellator title. And I believe that it's going to be the co-main is going to be Kyoji versus Sergio Pettis. If not for the fly title, then for the bantamweight title. And that could also be, I don't know if it's going to be Bellator or not. I know Bellator's bantamweight champion right now is Patchy Mix. So that could also be a candidate as well, because remember, Kyoji Horiguchi had a very close decision with Patchy Mix that arguably was a draw at worst, right? So there's a history there as well. That could be also the co-main matchup. It could be for the Bellator title as well. You know how Bellator says that, and Don Davis says that he wants to have 2 title fights per card, right? Those could be the 2 title fights for the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event. Just putting out there, just fantasy matchmaking right there. It would make sense, right? So, just also speaking of Patchy, on some of the Patchy Mix, remember he also has history with Juan Archuleta, another RIZIN fighter who has not had a fight announced yet. that could be another potential RIZIN versus Bellator fight that could happen on the New Year's Eve one, because I know that they want Archuleta is the only man to beat Patchy Mix, right? So I know that. Well, I have a good feeling that Bellator and Don Davis and all them, they want Patchy Mix to get that win back. So that'd be a prime candidate for a Bellator versus RIZIN fight, right? If they're not going to do it for the title, and then have Kyoji versus Pettis for the Fly title. I mean, just. And we were thinking about fantasy matchmaking. They have a bunch of Fader team guys with Epic RIZIN experience as well. So guys that are not no longer in the PFL season right now, like Moldavsky, guys who haven't yet had a fight, like Vadim Nemkov. I mean, these are all Fader team guys that have Epic RIZIN experience, that have a repertoire with the Japanese audience, that PFL-ators, we like to call them, a combination of PFL and Bellator. They could utilize these guys, put them on the card, and make a massive New Year's Eve collab mega event that could rival this Super RIZIN 3. To me, that's the only way to top this Super RIZIN 3. If they want to beat it and make an event of the year on New Year's Eve, then that's the way to go. Otherwise, Super RIZIN 3 that just happened last week, that's what's going to be event of the year. I mean, unless New Year's Eve has a massive, like I said, massive talent, and it's under the superior rule set. That's the key. That's the key. Don Davis so far has appeared that he's not fumbling the rematch, I like to call it, Chihiro Suzuki versus producer Pound for Pound Pitbull, but he's got to allow it under the superior rule set, just like the previous Bellator versus RIZIN event was on New Year's Eve. That was on a superior rule set. The fans loved it. Remember how everybody was going wild for AJ McKee because he threw a flying stomp and some grounded kicks? Remember, we got to call them grounded kicks, not soccer kicks, to help Shingo Kasawagi, the number 2 at Epic RIZIN. There's a legalization push happening right now to get the full superior rule set legalized. And we found that out from your interview, Jay Krish. Everybody check that out. Focus Fights interview, Jay Christian Gary and Shingo Kasawagi, number 2 of the Epic RIZIN. Fantastic interview. I think that was the best interview you've ever done. And just that was so much. And that interview, he revealed that there's a legalization push, and if we can, instead of calling them soccer kicks, call them grounded kicks. That's what we're going to do. So AJ McKee on that previous New Year's Eve event, the Bellator versus RIZIN event, he threw some flying stomps and some grounded kicks, and the fans were going wild about it, remember? So Don Davis, if you're listening, great job on not fumbling the rematch, it looks like. Do not be pussy and make it under the unified rules, the pussified rules, I like to call them. You go all the way, you make it under the superior rule set, and you will be rewarded. Trust me. Just like the previous RIZIN versus Bellator event, the fans loved it. They will love it even more, and it has a chance to become the event of the year on the superior rule set. Just period. It's going to be awesome. So I can't wait for that. And that pertains to also on the Super RIZIN 3, the intermission. We didn't get to talk about the intermission announcements that happened, on the We Are RIZIN podcast, but we will for this show, since this is a long form review show. So there's some sensational announcements, including Chihiro Suzuki calling out Patricio Pound for Pound Pitbull and saying Sakakibara-san, the CEO of Epic RIZIN, make it happen. So that's what I think is going to happen. So anyway,
But yeah, let's go ahead and talk about the intermission that happened with Super RIZIN 3 last weekend, because I know that RIZIN only got but a few events this year. I mean, if anything, RIZIN doesn't really have any long-term plans for what they might do with the landmark show in the cage, or what they might do with any side events over the next 4 months, because if you think about it, between this and the New Year's Eve event, all they got really is one event coming up, and that's RIZIN 49. And
that's in? Yes. Oh, thank you. Go ahead. I don't know if you're going to say the date.
I mean, is it on September 27th or something?
September 29th, I believe. It's either September 27th or September 29th, which let's just say September 28th, because that'll be the day for us international fans, right? So it's always a day earlier for whatever date they announce.
It's going to be taking place September 29th September 29th from the Saitama Super Arena. They boosting it back down to 18,000. Then obviously RIZIN 49 New Year's Eve. And then RIZIN 50 will take place March 25th, 2025 at this brand new venue. I think I'm already forgetting where it's going to be at, but still, though, it's going to be a pretty epic way for RIZIN to kick off 10 years in the fight game.
And we don't know if New Year's Eve is going to be RIZIN 49 or not. Remember, after September, there's supposed to be an October and November event, right? We don't know if it's going to be a landmark event or another numbered event. They could call the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event. That could be called RIZIN versus or Bellator versus RIZIN 2, right? So, I mean, there's a possible, or it might be even 3, because remember, Super RIZIN 2 was also an unofficial Bellator versus RIZIN card, right? So maybe they could call the New Year's Eve event Bellator versus RIZIN 3, and then still have room for, in October and November to do another numbered event, or a landmark event. We got to see how it's going to go. Also, remember, there's a KSW collaboration event happening for sure. That was tweeted out by the CEO of KSW, and that's going to be on December, the first couple of weeks of December, right? So I'm speculating they're going to be sending over Kleber Koike. He's the prime candidate, I think, for a collaboration KSW, because he's a former champion there. They got footage of him, all that good stuff. And the Azerbaijan guys like Vugar Karimov, that if he got a felony conviction, he can't get into Japan anymore. So I could easily see them sending those 2 guys to KSW, 2 top fighters, to the KSW collaboration. And since BKFC was on this Super RIZIN 3 event, remember, BKFC wants to do a bare knuckle Japan event, right? That for sure will be a collaboration with the Epic RIZIN. We don't know if that's coming later this year or not as well. So we don't know how many more events there could be after September 29th. But, if there isn't any more, and there's because they've been having a month or 2 gap in between events lately. And it's like, dude, how do you expect us to want to, get a subscription to RIZIN.TV, a $20 a month subscription, when there's only an event once every 2 months? They got to up the event amount. There's got to be at least one event a month. And, I think they should have more than 11 fights, especially for tentpole events like Super RIZIN 3 and New Year's collaboration mega events on New Year's Eve. They got to have at least 14 plus like the UFC does. I don't
think anybody's going to want to stay up for no 14 fight card. I think what they did here with the 11 fight card, just to let the excitement breathe a bit, I think they probably did a damn good job in putting this over.
I disagree, because this card was still 7 hours long, and they still only had 11 fights. They've done 7-hour cards where they've got 15 fights done, 15 plus fights done, no problem, in 7 hours. So they just cut down in between the fights a little bit, and they cut the intermission. Instead of 25-30 minutes, it's a 20-minute intermission. I think this time it was like a 30-minute intermission. So, they cut the intermission down 10 minutes to 20 minutes. So it's doable. Plus, for an event like this, Super RIZIN 3, that was so massive, you want more fights, I personally think, showcasing up-and-coming guys. Like, this one really only had, like Nii and Majima, right? I think they should have had at least 2 or 3 more. Plus, you had bare knuckle and boxing taking up 3 bouts on the card. So really, there was only 8 mixed martial arts fights on this card. And I'm just saying, for a massive audience like this, they should have had a couple more showcasing up-and-coming prospects, I think, or establishing, contenders, number 1 contender bouts or something. They should have added to this card. But I remember, this card was also plagued by injuries as well. We were supposed to get Manny Pacquiao versus Chihiro Suzuki. We were supposed to get Sika Izawa versus Reina. Right, and we were supposed to get even the BKFC fight. Remember, you said, you revealed on the preview show. Oh, no, wait, it was Aisha on a City Life Project. Shout out to Aisha on a City Life Project. He revealed that John Dotson was supposed to face the guy that he got when he defended his title and he drew with him. I forget what that fighter's name is right now, darn it. But he fought to a draw with them, and they were supposed to rematch in Japan for that BKFC title. But the guy that he fought to a draw with, he didn't want to do it over in Japan. That's why they called up Soya about a month or so out from the fight because of that. So, that's 3 fights right there, big fights that could have been, that's also another reason why you want to have more than 11 bouts total because of injury pullouts or pullouts for whatever reason, right? That's why you want to have more. That's why the UFC has 14 plus bouts each time in case one gets injured, like top one, they can bump another good one up, right? That's exactly the kind of mentality that the Epic Rising should have. And also for the subscription audience, at least one event a month. And I personally think at least 14 plus fights showcasing, and with minimal kick and bare knuckle. If you're going to do it, only have like 2 or 3 tops, just like this one. So that's why I want more fights. But anyways, so yeah.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I think you pretty much talked everybody down off the ledge, so to speak, when it came down. Yeah, when it came down to all this, I forgot to mention when it came down to RIZIN 48 coming up on September 29th, you already got 4 fights booked. Kyohei Hagiwara versus Ryo Takagi. Seiki Izawa in a non-title matchup against Kana Asakura, who's allegedly retiring from combat sports after this fight. Then you got 2 RIZIN World title bouts. The RIZIN Bantamweight title bout between Naoki Inoue and Social Kim. Social Kim, should he win, would only become the second former Road FC fighter to win a RIZIN belt, and only the second champion from Road FC to win a RIZIN belt. The first obviously being Hamdale Silva, Sioki Ham. And the RIZIN lightweight title will on the line as Roberto Satoshi de Sousa defends his title for the 3rd time against Luis Killer Gustavo. I mean, it kind of makes you think when it comes down to these 2 fights. I mean, when it comes down to the title fights, Inoue versus Social Kim. We all know the title got vacated because Archuleta came in a little overweight. Do you think that Social Kim would have had a great fight against Archuleta instead of facing off against Naoki Inoue? And as far as Gustavo goes, he hasn't had a fight. I mean, prior to this, he just came off the leg injury and had a stellar performance against Yoshinori Horie. Is he worthy of that title shot?
Yes. Let me answer the questions first about Gustavo. Yes, he has earned the title shot earlier this year, and it's been a long time coming. This is the one that people are most excited about. They've been calling for this one. That's why it's such a worthy headliner. And if Satoshi is able to dispatch Gustavo and take relatively little damage, Satoshi-san is another person I could see as a prime candidate for the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event. Remember, he's got history as Patricky pound for pound. I mean, not that's Patricio pound for pound Pitbull. I'm talking about his brother, Patricky Pitbull. They got history at the previous Super RIZIN 2. Remember, Satoshi was a late replacement, and he fought Patricky on like a couple days' notice and got a leg kick, TKO loss. He could be looking to avenge that, and that could be a prime candidate because Patricky is no longer in the PFL season. That could be another Bellator versus RIZIN fight on the card, and it could be for the title too, depending on what happens September 29th versus Gustavo. So that's a really interesting fight. I love it. Absolutely. That's the one we've been calling for. Happy to see Gustavo get his title shot finally. Everything is fantastic. Great headliner. Now for the Bantamweight title fight. And to answer your question, Jay Krish, yes, isn't that interesting? I believe they should have had, Juan Archuleta face it because he was the former champion. And he lost to Kaya Sakura, obviously, and that's what propelled Kaya to go to the UFC. But he was still the most recent bantamweight champion. To me, that would make him a prime candidate to fight again for the title, probably against Soo Chul Kim, right? Or even Inoue, because I don't know. But they have former history. Soo Chul Kim and Archuleta have fought before on that RIZIN versus Bellator event. Maybe that's what they're building into. Maybe they're saving Archuleta, like we were saying earlier, for a potential matchup with Mix or if Sucho Kim doesn't take as much damage versus Inoue, if he wins, maybe he could be fighting on the Bellator versus RIZIN card, against for the title. Who knows? Who knows? But there's a reason why Juan Archuleta has not been booked, and I'm speculating it's because they're saving him for the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event for a reason. But this bantamweight title fight, if he wasn't going to be fighting for the title, to me that's the only reason why, because they're saving him for the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event, right? So, but it's in a way people have been calling for him to fight for the title for a long time, right? They wanted him to fight Kaya Zakura, right? So that's why I believe they put him in there, because he probably would have beaten Kaya Zakura with superior grappling. We don't know for sure, but I'm guessing, and that's probably why they avoided that matchup for so long, because they didn't want Inoue to spoil the plans of Kaya Zakura going to the UFC. So that's why I believe fans have been calling for him to get a shot for a long time. That's why I think that's happening, and it's a great fight. Inoue versus Sucho Kim is a great fight on paper, right? So it's both of these are fantastic fights. I absolutely love them. Great headliner and co-main event. 2 title fights on one card. Fantastic.
Yeah, of course. And as the standard operating procedure is, card subject to change, more bouts will be announced in the coming weeks before that September date is officially announced.
And the other fights, do you want to talk about the other? I think the other fights are fantastic as well. Izawa and Kana in a retirement match for Kana. Izawa's got to go in there and steamroll Kana with little damage so she can be ready for New Year's Eve as a super fight against Striker Queen Reina. That's what I think has to happen. Izawa can't take too much damage so she can be ready again to go on New Year's Eve. And then for the what was the 4th fight again?
Let me see if I can pull it back up real quick. I think the 4th fight of that card is, as it was just announced last weekend, Kyohei Hagiwara versus...
Oh, that's right. Yes, thank you. How could I forget Kyohei Hagiwara? This is the fighter, this is announced during Super RIZIN 3. And in my opinion, during the intermissions of Super RIZIN 3, by Sakakibara-san, CEO of RIZIN. And in my opinion, you know why they did that? Because they might be building towards, if Hagiwara wins, he could be next in line to face Ren for the last man standing belt. They have a history. There's already a history there, a repertoire there between the fighters and the fans. There's heat already there. I mean, that to me, I can seriously see that happening. If Hagiwara wins and takes relatively little damage, I could see him facing Ren in the very near future for the last man standing title. Yes, and you know what?
We didn't get to talking about the fight in question to kick off this review portion. What are your thoughts on Takagi facing off against Kyohei Hagiwara? Even though, of course, Hagiwara is under 500 at 7-9. Takagi with the winning experience advantage at 7-2.
Yeah, it's a tough but winnable fight for Hagiwara, right? So, I mean, I like it because of that. Because what I want to happen is, obviously, I want Hagiwara to win, and I want to set up the LMS Last Man Standing title fight versus Ren. I think that's the next big fight for the LMS title, and Ren just got to. Hagiwara's just got to go out there and get it done. And it's a winnable fight for him. It's a tough fight, but it's winnable for him.
So you're not giving Takagi any chance to win?
No, absolutely I am. That's why I said it's tough. It's a tough fight because Takagi can absolutely win. Hagiwara has got to go in there prepared. He's got to bring his A game. I mean, and because like you said, he's got the winning experience on his side. Takagi does. So Hagiwara's got to bring his A game, and it's a tough fight for him, but it is winnable. It is a winnable fight for Hagiwara. He's just got to train his butt off and can bring his A game, and he can get it done. But Takagi he's no pushover, right? So that's why I say it's a tough fight. So that's why I like it. I like it a lot. And that way, if Hagiwara wins, they could easily say, okay, you just won a tough fight. Last man standing versus Ren is next for all the money. Let's go. Let's book it. Let's sell out another arena.
Okay, fair enough. Now, considering that you're the first one to talk about the match that happened in the main event, and I basically want to see more competitors come after Ren Hiromoto, even though this belt really doesn't mean anything to me. The main event, we got to talk about it. Ren Hiromoto knocking out Mikuru Asakura in 2 minutes, 18 seconds of round number 1 of a 5-round fight, mind you, to become the last man standing in the main event in front of 50,000, nearly 50,000 people at Saitama Super Arena. What were your overall thoughts about this fight before the inevitable happened?
That was epic. I absolutely loved it. Remember, my head said Mikuru was going to win, but my heart wanted Ren to win, right? And that's exactly what happened. And he did it in sensational fashion. And now Ren's stock is just rising through the roof, right? Or through the roof. I mean, his stock is on the rise, superstar status. This is a battle between two superstars in Japan. And, you know, Ren is now just, the stock is at all-time high. I disagree with you on the last man standing belt not being, not meaning much. It's the equivalent to the UFC's BMF belt, right? That's what the last man. Now remember, like you were saying, Sakakibara-san said this was a 5-round fight. It was going to be scored round by round, not under the unified rules, mind you, not the 10-point must system. It was going to be scored round by round. Each round as a whole is going to be scored.
Unified scoring with the RIZIN rules intact.
Yes, so not 10-point must system, but round by round scoring under the RIZIN rules. And another caveat was going to be at the 3rd round, it was going to start open scoring. So we would know who was behind the scorecards and who had to turn it up to win the bout in the final rounds, right? But that didn't happen. Ren just came out there in sensational fashion, blasted Mikuru, one of the best knockouts of the night. Just, I mean, cherried the Super RIZIN 3 event. Made the fans were just going crazy. It was so awesome. And like I said, now now Ren's superstar status is just through the roof. And just, I mean, man, I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And because now Mikuru, remember, he got beaten so badly he retired. But his brother Kai says that it's not going to be a permanent retirement. He's going to take some time away. So let's hope that is the case, because Mikuru is another massive star. But we always knew that might happen, right? Because Mikuru said that he had, if he's talking about retirement, that means he is retired. He's got one foot out the door. That means you're pretty much already out the door, right? He's got his Breaking Down promotion that is a great feeder for the Epic RIZIN, for him to run that Breaking Down promotion. He's got his YouTube channels and stuff that he's making, boatloads of money on. So the guy is fine. He doesn't really need to fight. So, if his head wasn't in it, then that's why. I mean, I thought for sure he probably came in this fight, Jay Krish, thinking he's got it in the bag, thinking, okay, my experience trumps Ren's experience. I'm just gonna be able to out grapple this guy. But he didn't take into account that Ren has K1 level striking, as Joe Rogan likes to say. I love using that term. He's J kicker, K1 level kickboxing striking, and as we saw. And like we were saying on the previous shows, remember, Mikuru had just lost late last year in November, I think it was, against Yaman, another fighter on this card. And it was in a small gloves kickboxing match, right? That Yaman is famous for. Yaman knocked him out in that. So I was speculating, could that have cracked Mikuru's chin? And as we saw, yes, it did. When he came up against another fighter with power like Ren, absolutely. So just overall, I mean, sensational fight. What a cherry to a sensational event. And just I couldn't be happier. I couldn't be happier with the result. And I hope that Mikuru, is not retired completely. And he comes back eventually in the future. And like we were saying on the We Are RIZIN podcast, a great opponent would be Yutaka Saito. Both guys that carried the promotion during the pandemic years, having another fight next year to really I don't want to say a retirement match, but it'd just be a great match. So I hope that's what happens.
I mean, I would probably hope so too, but I'm also hoping that Mikuru reconsiders on the retirement aspect because, yeah, I said that he could be a showcase fighter on the We Are RIZIN pod. I really think that he can be a showcase fighter, but when you're out up the combat sports game, and this holds true for pretty much any combatant. You want to chase that last payday because you feel like you're missing out on a lot. And I mean, it's no different than with boxers chasing that Russian payday, which I hope that's not the case anymore with the Riyadh Saudi shit shows happening these days. With WWE Legends contract, so to speak. I mean, Mikuru is going to want one more opportunity at the very least to continue to prove himself instead of just outright riding into the sunset with all his breaking down guys.
Especially after such an embarrassing loss like that. Mikuru, let's face it, he got embarrassed. Ren embarrassed Mikuru, knocked him out badly. So on a massive event. So to me, I just cannot see. That's why I think Kai was saying that he's not retired. He's not going to be permanently retired. I just can't see Mikuru leaving on that note, getting embarrassed like that to such a. I mean, I think. Look, if Mikuru comes back, just like you're saying, he can't ride off in the sunset off of that embarrassing loss like that. He's got to come back. I think Saito is a perfect fight, and if he wins versus Saito, maybe they do the Ren rematch. You know, maybe that's another that could headline another event in the future and turn that into a trilogy bout. You know, I mean,
here's the thing, though. There's a difference between bowing out gracefully and then basically retiring on your, well, not only on your stool, but embarrassing yourself on the mic, a la Thomas Hitman Herms versus Uriah Grant from 2000. If you don't know what I'm talking about, search it on YouTube after you watch this podcast. You'll basically get a gist of what I'm meaning. But still, though, point of the matter is, when it comes down to Mikuru, he's going to have to decipher his choices really carefully. Because one bad fight could possibly mean the end of not only his career, but his livelihood.
You think it would affect that? I don't think it would affect his YouTube or breaking down. I think that's completely, fans can separate that from his fighting career, I think. So, well, maybe the YouTube might. I don't know. I don't know if it'll affect the popular that, but I think breaking down will be okay.
Well,
I think they should.
Let's face it, Jane. I mean, with the Paul brothers, you can't separate this. You can't separate what they've been doing in the fight world from their complete stupidity that they've been known for before. Mass going through a suicide forest.
Yeah, that was crazy. I remember that. But you know what? That sort of put him on the map. If you, I mean, like we were saying with the Ryan Garcia, you're talking about the bad press and stuff like that would happen from Ryan Garcia. That's, I mean, the old saying, all press is good press, right?
Yeah.
So, and look what happened with Jake Paul. You know, like you're saying, going on that suicide force, almost getting canceled for it.
Well,
I didn't know who he was before that. I had never heard of him.
Almost got canceled for that, and pretty much he's basically given an equivalent of one of these.
Yeah. Yeah, but now everybody knows him. Now everybody knows him. That's what propelled him to be famous. Just like Kim Kardashian. She was an unknown until a sex tape, right? So there's just all press is good press. Oh, hey, Todd Atkins, yes. Todd, what's up, Todd? How you doing, brother?
Good, man.
The legend is in the building all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Mr. Todd Atkins, how are you, sir?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Excellent. Talking about Super RIZIN 3, and let's make sure to let all the fans know Todd Atkins was the real news journalist that broke the news about Bellator and PFL and the sale of Bellator before anybody. And it had the whole mainstream media, the fake news media, as I like to call them. They were so butthurt about Todd breaking that news before they did, getting the scoop of the year that year. That's Todd Atkins. That's who we're talking to right now. So welcome to the show, brother.
It's good to see you guys.
Now, Todd, I'm sorry that we basically didn't get enough time to talk to you about this Ren Hiramoto versus Mikuru Asakura fight. But when it came down, I mean, real quick, I mean, what were your overall thoughts about this contest, the main event between Hiramoto and Asakura, before we move on and talk about Pac-Man's escapades in this promotion?
You know, I didn't even see the main event yet, actually. Maybe you guys can talk about it.
We pretty much did, but still, though. I mean,
I saw Manny's fight with what was the
Ampo.
guy's name? Yeah, yeah.
You know what? At least you kind of know about him compared to Ryan Garcia, basically just shitting all over the name. But still,
Yeah,
I think that's
Ampo.
part of his gimmick.
He was the guy who
That's part
sparred
of his gimmick.
Sean Strickland, right? Isn't that who Strickland sparred?
yeah, Sean.
Ampo?
Yeah,
Yes.
Rukia Ampo sparred with Sean Strickland. And speaking of, now that we're in the mood to talk about it, the Manny Pacquiao versus Rukia Ampo fight was just, I mean, the emotions were there. You'd never seen, I mean, a lot of people born after 1997 have never seen Pacquiao fight in front of a sold out crowd in Japan like that, let alone didn't even realize that this was his second time fighting in Japan, as opposed to the first time being in Korakuen Hall all the way back in 96. But still, though, when it came down to this fight, the highlights were there. It was pretty much like a big time world title fight, except that it was a 3-round exhibition that just, I mean, I wouldn't say it made Ampo feel like the dominant fighter because he felt like the dominant fighter, even though he had that height advantage. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. If that Pacquiao were to just face off against Mario Barrios, he'd get destroyed. But at least it was a fun exhibition. And yeah, Ryan Garcia kind of ruined the moment saying that, oh, I want to fight Pacquiao. Oh, I want to fight Ampo on New Year's Eve. Maybe he should think about fighting Philip Minoru Kimura, since they're both steroid junkies and probably are easily susceptible to getting banned. Still don't. Todd, what were your overall thoughts about this fight that ended in a draw, but probably excited and maybe confused all who watched it?
Well, I mean, Manny's older, obviously, and I thought Ampo was a bigger guy. You know, he's taller and his back's a little wider. You know, he's a big, thick dude, and yeah, I mean, I think had they gone live, maybe Ampo, could have knocked Manny out. Maybe, maybe if they had a real fight, like maybe 12 rounds or whatever.
I mean,
Because Manny, I don't think it was for me. It was I mean, I know it's an exhibition, but it left you wondering: does Manny have a lot left?
Not really.
You know what I mean?
Not really. I mean,
and he's too old anyway. I mean, he's how old is he? 40 something already. Yeah, I mean, he can't go. I mean, if he fights Garcia, maybe his experience would be enough to help him last, but he could get knocked out by Garcia too.
Yeah,
I don't know if he'd knock out Garcia. I don't know. At this point, the young Manny would have, but I don't know at this point.
But Manny Pacquiao was about to be 46 coming up in January. The last time anybody saw him in the ring, he was getting manhandled by Yordenis Uga in a fight that was supposed to have been Errol Spence Jr. versus Manny.
No, Ugas is a big, strong guy too, man. Like he's big, muscular as hell.
Yeah, but still,
that's kind of how he fights, to just kind of be physical and muscle people around.
But still, though, for me, I just thought it was a fun exhibition. It was basically a fun way to see a legend like Manny Pacquiao, as humble as he can be, even though he has his controversies, his trials and transgressions. But still, though, the dude is a legend, and I'm pretty sure that it was a delight for a lot of people around the world, especially in his native Philippines, just to watch him compete after teasing Ryzen pretty much for the last 8 years, pretty much for the last 5 years to try and fight in this promotion. Jay Wolf, what were your overall thoughts about this fight? Do you think that Manny was a little too old to be getting in there with somebody as, I wouldn't say young, but as rested and as giant as Ampo?
No, Ampo says he's only 28. So actually, anything under 30 is young. And Manny is 45 plus, right? So he's 45 years old, over 45, 7 months old. I mean, 7 months over 45. So he's hit that 45 wall. And it's just, I mean, you don't know this yet, Jay Krish, but that wall 40, man, it's. I can only imagine what it's like be like at 45. I'm almost there, but I mean, Manny to get in the ring against a 28-year-old, a massive guy like Todd's talking about, which is true. The guy had, it looks like a foot over him and was a full couple weight classes bigger, it looked like. And, Manny didn't look good the first couple rounds.
Yeah.
It looked like Ampo was taking it to. That's what you're talking about, Jay Krish, and why Manny didn't look good. Because the first couple rounds, Ampo was taking it to him and had a couple of flurries that really, like really connected on Manny. And dude, to the point to where King CeeLo in the RIZIN Discord was talking about, hey, if this was Chihiro might have been able to get it done and knock him out. Chihiro might have been able to, or at least if it went to decision, Chihiro would have probably been the clear winner. But hey, Manny, that old man savviness, veteran savviness, one of the most most exciting offensive boxers in history, especially this new generation. For those that don't know, that like Jay Krish was saying, that were born after 1997, they don't know that Manny Pacquiao is one of the most exciting offensive boxers that we've seen. And he turned it on in that late in the second round, and especially that third round, and he really started pouring on. And who knows what would have happened if the fight kept going a couple more rounds, which I think they should do for the next. If they're going to do another exhibition, it shouldn't just be 3 rounds. It should go like 4 or 6 rounds, because especially for Manny Pacquiao, because clearly he's a slow starter. So, but credit to Ampo, man. He did good those first couple rounds.
Yeah, I thought he left some good body shots too.
Yeah.
Especially his body punches.
Yeah, it was way better than we expected, right? And that's why we're saying it. Probably Chihiro might have been able to win. So it's just, man. But hey, Manny Pacquiao, great fight. I'm curious to know how well it. Obviously it did good in the Philippines, but what about the other, greater Southeast Asia, that area, that region of the world? I wonder how well it did there as well, because of Manny Pacquiao, and also the Ryan Garcia stuff you're talking about, where Ryan Garcia gets in the cage, in the ring afterwards, and starts calling out Manny and Ampo and doing his gimmick where he's being annoying, I like to call it the Mayweather gimmick. I know Mayweather's not the first to do the gimmick where he's annoying, trying to get people to want to tune in to watch him lose, but clearly Ryan Garcia, that's what he's doing, I think. And he got in there doing that, saying he doesn't know who Ampo was. He just says he wants to fight this guy, wants to fight Manny Pacquiao on New Year's Eve. So just selling it. I loved it. And like Todd was saying on the MMA Conspiracy Hour, I want to give a shout out to that show. Fantastic show that just happened. He was lambasting the fake news media for not covering it more. I'm so happy that you took them to task, Todd, because that was a huge moment right there. They had Ryan Garcia and Manny Pacquiao in the ring together, and they were calling each other after Manny Pacquiao had just put on an exhibition, and were calling to fight each other in the future. If that had happened in America or anywhere else other than Japan, in a UFC rival promotion, Super and Epic RIZIN, then dude, it would have been front page news on boxing. It would have been like, because there wasn't any boxing that was happening last weekend, was there? So that would have been massive news. And I'm so
compared to this weekend,
right? Exactly.
They had 48,000 people for a show that didn't have Kai Asakura, didn't have Kyoji Horiguchi.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big story.
Yes.
Not just the fights, the fact that they have 48,000 plus for a show that didn't really have their top stars.
And on a UFC pay-per-view weekend, beat the snot out of a UFC pay-per-view as well.
That's what I'm saying. Japan's, if they can get something like that consistent, and this is something me and Zach Arnold were talking about, if they can draw those kind of crowds, because Pride was doing that fairly consistently, they might have, then Japan's resurgence might be complete as far as viewing the amount of people they can attract.
Yes. And that was on what you're talking about, Todd, with Arnold. That was on the MMA Conspiracy Hour. I want to make sure the fans, again, that's what we're talking about. Todd was talking to Arnold about this on the MMA Conspiracy Hour. Fantastic show. Go check it out.
Yeah, he was saying, it proves that Japan is still a crown jewel market. I know we've kind of talked up and down about it sometimes, like Andrew would say, yeah, I don't know, but if they can do that consistently or even half of the time, that's saying a lot. If they can get that kind of crowd participation again, and
I 100% agree. Super Rising in the summer and then New Year's Eve, the mega events on New Year's Eve, if they can get around about 50,000 fans each one of those shows, and then for the other events, like the numbered events, get 20,000 plus, and then for the landmark events, get 15,000 plus. Hey, you're right. Almighty Pride FC is back. Pride FC 2.0 is here, and just as long as they keep the superior rule set, they got to keep the superior rule set, and they got to get back to doing Grand Prix. That was a staple of the Almighty Pride FC and why it was so cool, and arguably why I believe the Epic RIZIN is so cool as well. So as long as they keep that, I agree. I agree with you and Arnold that it's absolutely the resurgence is on right now, and it could be complete by this New Year's Eve. Imagine, Todd, if this New Year's Eve, we were talking before you got on the show, what if this New Year's Eve is in fact the collaboration mega event with Bellator? And what if it's in another Saitama Super Arena stadium mode? And what if they sell out 40,000 plus again? What there's a resurgence complete then? I'd argue yes, it is.
I think they will on New Year's Eve because they're going to probably have Pacquiao Garcia or Ampo. I would do Ampo because Japanese fighter, I'd probably do that one instead. But if they want to do Pacquiao Garcia, then so be it. But I think Ampo would be more of an attractive match because you got a Japanese fighter versus Garcia. But I think they'll do that number, no doubt, in New Year's Eve. I'm saying if they, like when Pride was at his apex, they could go to Yokohama Arena and sell it out. Saitama or Super Arena sell it out. They could do that every show, And if RIZIN starts doing that, oh, look out, because now they can start to up their money. They can maybe go after some free agents. UFC's having some problems of their own, with the lawsuit. It could really change on its head. Maybe a year from now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But
yes, absolutely.
Unfortunately, one of our partners, Andrew Benjamin, in this case, of the We Are Right podcast, is voicing his opinion, saying nobody cares about street.
That's what I'm saying. Andrew's a little up and down. He's not sold on it being returned yet, and I get it. Sometimes those of us that loved, Pride and whatnot, it's kind of like, can we get it again? Can we get it again? And it's almost like a yes no kind of thing on our head. Yeah, it's not coming back. Yeah, maybe it is.
I don't think they can get it with Ryan Garcia at the helm because of the fact that he is a bigot. He's a racist. He's a homophobe.
Oh, he's a cuckoo. There's no doubt about it. But I think a real boxing match between him and Ampo, not an exhibition. We'll do 5 rounds, 10 rounds, whatever. A real one.
But Mayweather is all those things that you were talking about, Jay Krish. Come on.
Mayweather, for all his issues with the law, with his family, with the people he banged, and
the domestic violence, the racism as well. Come on. Garcia is just copying that. He's just copying that formula.
For all of what Mayweather has done in and out the ring, he was never stripped by a governing body, a sanctioning body in the sport of boxing, like Garcia has.
Yeah, but still, you can't sit there and lambast Garcia for all this stuff when Mayweather is doing the same thing and give him a pass because it's just Mayweather's gimmick to get people to tune into the fights. It's obviously Ryan Garcia's gimmick as well. I think who was the first one that did that? Was it Ali? I think it was Ali that was wanting to be obnoxious to get people to want to tune in to see him get knocked out, right? Yeah. And Mayweather just took that to the next level, and Garcia's trying to copy it. I think
when it came down to Ali, he was in the era of the civil rights movement where he was basically fighting for his humanity.
I'm talking about his gimmick where he would be a loudmouth and try to piss people off to get them to want to tune in to watch him lose, right? So that's what Mayweather that's what people say with all the transgressions that Mayweather's done. The same stuff that Ryan Garcia has done. The racism, the misogyny. I mean, Ryan Garcia had having domestic violence charges on him. Yeah, he got kicked out by the for steroids for a year, suspended for a year. Then Mayweather has domestic violence charges on it. Garcia doesn't have that. So it's like, I mean, come on. I think Garcia is doing a gimmick. I know.
I don't know, man. I was a little it pissed me off a little bit to see him miss
on
the
the
weight.
contrary, as we're looking at here in the comments from Andrew Benjamin, Jay Garcia is not a gimmick.
I don't think he is necessarily. Garcia, it kind of ticked me off. He missed the weight. Then he popped positive for steroids. He could have. What if he had really hurt
Devin Haney?
Or what if Haney's never the same? After that, he knocked him down like maybe 3 or 4 times cleanly, and maybe 2 or 3 other times Haney was holding himself up off of Garcia's body. What if Haney's never the same? It's not right.
Exactly.
Yeah, but Todd, you're talking about the stuff in fight stuff. Jay Chris was talking about.
He's a little off his rocker, man. I do. I think he's a little off it.
Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe, but
abuse problem,
if he wasn't off his rocker, he wouldn't have a restraining order again.
Yeah, I think he's got some issues.
Well, possibly, but I still think that part of it is, and it's the same thing with Mayweather. They're doing it to try to get people to tune in to watch him lose.
But I'll say this: if he fights Onpo or even Pacquiao, I would rather see him do the Onpo fight from a RIZIN point of view. People, they will watch it.
Yes.
Yes,
and they better cover it.
None.
They better freaking cover it. Otherwise, it's going to be beyond obvious if they don't cover it, right? So, I mean, but Drew, for all his hater comments that he puts down there, I actually kind of agree with that that people don't want the 3x3 exhibitions. I think they should bump that up to 4 or 6 rounds instead of just 3 rounds, right?
Well, it's not working.
I don't want exhibition, period. They could do 3 rounds, say, look, we're going head up on this, It's kill or be killed, one or the other, 3 or 5 rounds, these guys are trying to win. Exhibition maybe means, we're not going to knock each other out. You know what I mean? 3 and 5 rounds of, yes, one guy, we're trying to win this fight.
Okay,
Think of it, considering the fact that we've talked about this boxing match for long enough, but we also want to keep consistent with the card here. I mean, you know what? Fuck consistency. Let's talk about the bare knuckle fight that happened on the card as well. Let's talk about the 2 bare knuckle bouts that happened. For one, Ty Emery, who obviously is Australian, broke Charissa Sagala's nose in the early going. And then in the main event, in the premier bare knuckle fight on the card, keep in mind both of these bare knuckle bouts were 125 pounds. BKFC world champion John Dodson, the Magician, defeated Takaki Sawyer via unanimous decision.
Talk about a resurgence for Dodson. He's not in the UFC, but he's really become a fan favorite in RIZIN, and he's had a lot of success.
Yeah,
and BKFC.
But in
both
that fight that he had against Takaki Sawyer, he was knocked down twice in the first 2 rounds, and then gained steam at the 3rd or 4th round before it was an all-out in the 5th.
Yeah, it was a comeback win. It was a sensational comeback win. One of the fights of the night, arguably, and obviously the bare knuckle fight of the night. And just what a fantastic showcase of bare knuckle. And I love how they also brought in, like you're saying, Ty Emery versus another good-looking woman with big. That was, you saw the Japanese fans. They were talking about. It was so funny because Sagala, Emery's opponent, also had big breasts as well. So that. The Japanese fans were just loving that. And, Ty Emery was known for, when she got her first bare knuckle victory, she flashed the crowd, right? So that was a question. Is she going to flash the crowd this time? Japan's got some decent exposure laws that she might not want to break. We were speculating on the preview shows about if she's going to wear nipple coverings, but she didn't flash any of that. So she's still got a fantastic OnlyFans site as well. So I was speculating that maybe she might do some advertising for that. But anyways, that was a great women's showcase bout for bare knuckle. And bare knuckle just had last night also a fantastic event showcasing some beautiful women throw down for bare knuckle. And it was just a great showcase of that. But the main attraction was absolutely the Dotson fight. Dotson and Soya. Just what a fantastic bare knuckle bout. Like Jay Chris was saying, Dotson had to come back from a couple of knockdowns. It was a comeback victory for him. What a performance by Soya to really just, I bet you they're going to ask him back. They're going to ask Soya back. He's going to get, if bare knuckle comes to Japan later this year, he's a prime candidate to be on a bare knuckle show. Absolutely. Him and Rude Boy would be prime candidates, maybe to even fly over to America or another part wherever they do another bare knuckle to be on there. As part of the RIZIN collaboration with bare knuckle. They're just, Soya just so totally punched his ticket for that. And just, what a sensational fight that he put up. It takes two to make a fight awesome. And Soya was one of them. He's one of the reasons why that fight was so awesome with Dotson. And just absolute credit to Dotson. Like Todd's saying, absolute resurgence this man is having. He's moonlighting in RIZIN, fighting mixed martial arts, and he's the bare knuckle champion, putting on sensational bare knuckle fights. He's a legit crossover, as Drew likes to say, just doing both at the same time. After the fight, he was calling he wants to be on the New Year's Eve card. He wants to fight New Year's Eve. And he wants to fight mixed martial arts right away. He's like, I'm ready to get back in the ring right now. They asked him, like, when do you want to fight again? He's like, right now. He was down for a one-night tournament. So it was just, man, I can't say enough good stuff about it. It was a lot of fun. The bare knuckle fight was a lot of fun.
I think fighting in Japan brings that out of guys, because I just saw Cheeto Vera say maybe I turned around too quickly after O'Malley fight. It's 5 months ago that he fought O'Malley. But, guys fight in Japan, they were ready to fight more than once in a night. I think Japan just brings that out of them because they've seen the history and tradition of that. As to where guys in the UFC are complaining about fighting too much when they don't fight for 3 or 4 months,
Absolutely. Great point. I love that.
Going back to I can understand that it would be cool to see John Dotson get a few more fights a year, but he has to realize that if he takes any more ass whoopings like the one he took, he's going to easily suffer from, punch drunkenness, at least I think. But still, though, going back to the women's bare knuckle bout, Emery versus Segala, man, enough craziness can't be said about this fight enough. The fight ended with a broken nose, like 30 seconds into the fight.
And it was visibly broken. It was visibly crooked on her face. You can see it, and it got an audible reaction from the crowd. The crowd oohed and awed when the camera showed Segala's nose, and it was crooked. And the crowd was like, "Oh!" You could hear the whole collective crowd audience just really gush about that. It was great, exactly like you're saying, Jay Krish.
Exactly, and to be honest, the only finish out of the women's combat sports world that could top that was that Iman Khalid fight that happened in the Olympics earlier this week that got everybody basically in their feelings about, oh, what's a woman and what's a man? No, that woman just straight up knocked the hell out the other woman, and now she's on to potentially winning a medal regardless of how she does in the semifinals in the Olympics, but that's neither here nor there. With Ty Emery winning this fight against Miss Segala, do you think that she might get the opportunity to fight more in RIZIN, or, if BKFC continues, if BKFC does expand to Japan, could we see more of her? Signs flashing the crowd, of course.
Absolutely. We can see more of her in the BKFC and on her OnlyFans. So I don't know if you checked that out yet, but she's got some good OnlyFans pics as well. So I love how that's a sponsor for BKFC. They're a partner, like the walkout, not the walkout, but the fight gear. The fight gear was OnlyFans fight gear and stuff like that. So That's why we were thinking they were going to do a flash into the audience to try to sell the OnlyFans stuff as well, right? So just, I think. What? Go ahead.
Gonna do that because Japan has some very strict nudity laws.
Yeah, I get that. But I mean, there could be ways around it. I was thinking maybe nipple coverings with the OnlyFans logo or whatever, just stuff like that. Just add an extra fun for the Japanese fans that are there, and just to help put over Ty Emery. And the answer to your question is yes, absolutely. She's going to be coming back to RIZIN. If there is a bare knuckle Japan show, she will absolutely be on it. She will absolutely be, if they send over maybe a Japanese woman who wants to do bare knuckle, Ty Emery is going to be a prime candidate for them to have a bout when they send over Japanese fighters, internationally to the bare knuckle. Absolutely, Ty Emery is just, I mean, that was a great star-making performance basically for her, visibly breaking the nose of another woman. That was, and got the audible oohs and ahs from the crowd of almost 50,000. That's definitely going to put her over, especially with the BKFC brass. They're going to give her more high-profile fights in the future as well, 100%.
Okay, and Todd, now that you basically heard what we had to say about it, what are your overall thoughts about this? About bare knuckle and RIZIN being blended together?
I talked to Zach Arnold about it. I bring him back up because Zach he's been writing about the sport from pretty close to the beginning, I would say. He was really instrumental in the whole Pride thing when it was blowing up, when they were blowing themselves up, so to speak. But he was one of the prime people that was writing a lot of the factual stuff about that. And, I thought he said something interesting because I thought he might trash it. But he said, he liked it, and also that it's kind of showing that maybe this newer generation of Japanese fans they want something different. They aren't just looking for MMA only, or they're not necessarily UFC fans. They came to that show in large number because they want something different.
Mm-hmm.
Something that is a little bit off the norm, but. In RIZIN, like he's saying, they can pull from Pride and do some of those Grand Prix and things like that. They have other things they could have up their sleeve that they haven't necessarily done yet, and so I think the big story for me and him was just on a night where UFC also happened. It wasn't the biggest show of the weekend. It was RIZIN by a large margin.
Yes, and it was a UFC pay-per-view. Make sure you point that out. It wasn't just an Apex Shed show, right? It was a big tempo UFC pay-per-view that the Epic RIZIN outshone. It absolutely beat the snot out of a UFC pay-per-view. So that's why I was so glad, Todd, that you had just lambasted the fake news media for not covering it. Mm-hmm. It was just, I mean, that was great because we were doing the same thing on the We Are RIZIN podcast and now here. And we're absolutely justified in that. There's no excuse for them not to cover such a massive event other than that they're trying to protect the UFC, which is my MMA conspiracy hour theory, is that, they're doing it to protect the UFC and their brand. They don't want to let the fans know that there's a rival out there that has put on better shows than the UFC, with a superior rule set to the UFC, with a superior format, like Todd was saying, bring back the Grand Prix, all that good stuff. I mean, they want to protect the UFC brand.
And there's no conspiracies. Some of them are doing that outright.
Yes. Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that. Absolutely. And also to piggyback on what you were saying about the bare knuckle adding stuff for the Japanese crowd, another thing that it adds that I've been saying since the beginning is bare knuckle is very violent with a lot of blood. And remember, traditionally in Japan, they have stopped fights for little tiny cuts and broken noses and stuff like that. That just start being, bloody noses that are possibly broken. We've seen fights stop for that in the past, but bare knuckle is getting them acclimated or toughening them up to seeing fighters bleed, and that could pay dividends for future mixed martial arts fights. Because in the Dotson fight that we're talking about here, he was cut up and busted up. They both were. There was blood flying all over the place, and they didn't stop the fight. It was fantastic, right? So that could spill over to mixed martial arts. It could show that the Japanese audience is toughening them up, or they're acclimating to seeing more blood, so that in the future, when cuts happen, they don't gotta, or a bloody nose happens, they don't gotta stop the fight. They can let the fight continue, the mixed martial arts fight, I should say. So that's another aspect of the bare knuckle collaboration that I absolutely love. Possibly my favorite part of the collaboration. I mean, we'll see if they send over guys like Eddie Alvarez and others, big names that are in bare knuckle to fight for RIZIN, in possibly mixed martial arts as well. That could supersede this, but I just love the fact that it's getting the Japanese audience and the Japanese, commissions and stuff acclimated to blood and violence. I just love it. I love that aspect of the collaboration with bare knuckle. So that you're talking about something, bare knuckle adding something to it. That's what Zach Arnold was talking about. That's another thing that it's adding to it is the blood and violence factor. That's now, that could save some fights for RIZIN that would normally be stopped for a cut. Now could be let go and now that doesn't matter about if they're bleeding or not, right? So it's just another underrated aspect of the collaboration. I just wanted to point out there.
I see.
If I'm RIZIN, what I would really like to do, though, if I was RIZIN, is top to top rank and look, how can we get tension on here to box real boxing matches? Not BS stuff. Real boxing match. How do we do a collaboration with you guys? We'll even take on maybe another fight, with some other guys. But how do we get maybe one fight a year with tension or something like that?
Yes. Maybe. I love it, Todd. How about the Ryan Garcia bout, right? What if I know that he's suspended?
I think that would happen with
I'm talking real, not BS. They can't have a real fight with.
Well, you were saying have two fights, not just one.
Yeah, or they could say, look, we'll take one of your other guys from your stable who's not necessarily big, and we'll feature him on one of our cards that has 40,000 people there, as long as we can get tension. If anything, in part of the package,
If anything, Todd, I think the main thing that Dave would probably need to do is talk to Akihiko Honda, talk to Take-In Promotions, because those are the people that are behind tension nowadays, not really so much as, say, Bob Arum or some of Top Rank Incorporated. But, yeah, that would be really cool if they were to really take a custom to having Tenshin Nasukawa come back to RIZIN, but bringing his boxing matches there as well, even though it would probably piss off a lot of people if the fights are 10 rounds and then you got a full-blown MMA card, you're having people stay up 6 hours.
Well, you have less fights, maybe a couple, 2 or 3 less or something. It can be done.
Yeah.
Especially for him, it can be done. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're going to do it all the time.
Exactly.
I think it's a great idea. And if not Ryan Garcia, then a Manny Pacman fight, right? It could be the second bout.
Or just one of his general fights. He's with not far from title contention now. Mm-hmm. From what I'm
No. I'm talking about for the second fight. They have the tension fight be the real main event, and then for the secondary fight, boxing fight, maybe it could be another Pac-Man fight. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. But I hear what you're saying, and I love it. I think it's a great idea.
I'd offer Top Rank anything. You want to put one of your prospects on, as long as we get tension, as the other fight.
Mm-hmm.
We'll take anybody. You can put whoever you want. They can fight in front of 40,000 people. We'll take whoever. We just want him as part of the deal.
Mm-hmm. But let's go ahead and move on back to the card at hand. I mean, I think since we already talked about about 4 fights? We still got 7 to go, so let's go ahead and talk about this Yuta Kubo fight where he just obliterated Yutaka Saito's insides, beating the inaugural RIZIN featherweight champion via body kick TKO, 4:19 of round 2. And the best part about it is, it seemed like Kubo's got his groove back, because he basically, I mean, let's face it, his now ex-wife Sarah Kubo did a really shitty rendition of a certain song that I basically jotted down. I can't even remember what the damn song was, but still, though, Sarah Kubo did her best to lip sync the entrance. Yuta Kubo came out and dazzled in front of 50,000 people. And now, considering the fact that he beat the former and first ever RIZIN featherweight champion, could we see this man, this former kickboxing crossover, become a future star in MMA, same in the veins as Chihiro Suzuki?
It's
Todd?
all about consistency, you know. I mean, if the guys can win multiple fights in a row and show that they can, you know, be successful, then yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, I know Japanese aren't as hard on people that lose, but you know, to really kind of escalate, you have to win a few fights, you know, win some fights, go on a streak. Be consistent with your performances.
I see. And Jay, what say you?
Yeah, absolutely loved it. This is the biggest win of Kubo's career, and this was the only fight that had some superior rule set action. If you remember, during the finish, there was a couple grounded knees that were thrown in there at the very end. So, and just this is the biggest win of Kubo's career. I mean, over a former champion, and just this propels him into the title picture now. I couldn't believe that he won like this in sensational fashion, and just, I mean, you know, and that's why we're talking about Saito possibly facing Mikuru for like a, you know, like the pandemic era Legends match, right? And it just, but just to get back to Kubo, just what an epic performance by him. Really answered questions. He was showing great takedown defense. Obviously has his K1 striking, his K1 level striking. I love calling it that. And just, man, and just shows a command again for the superior rule set. This man also has a 12-6 elbow TKO in his repertoire as well. Now he's got a grounded knees in his TKO repertoire as well. So this man understands the assignment. He's a big-time kickboxing crossover star along with his wife as well. I mean, they were saying, the audience, I mean, the announcers were saying that they're not together anymore or whatever, but she was there, I mean, looking good, and, you know, in her short top, showing off her boobs and stuff, and really showing support for him and everything. I mean, I don't know. It looked like there's still some love there, basically, as what I'm trying to get at for him. And Kubo, just what a great performance. And just, man, I just can't wait to see what he's going to do next. And Todd, you were saying that he needs to be consistent. He's on a streak right now. This puts him on like a what?
That's what I'm saying, you know, to kind of maintain this momentum. That's kind of what puts some guys over, like Sakuraba, Tenshin, these guys who not only show they're real good, then they continue it. You know.
Yeah, and this has been a progression for him. He's on a streak right now, and this was the highest level fight that he's had in mixed martial arts that he's had to date, and the biggest win for him in mixed martial arts to date. And I think should propel him, if not to the title shot, definitely a #1 contenders bout next. That's how big this was. I think that Kubo has earned that now with this sensational performance, and he's won and no more than 2 fights away from a title shot. Period. It's just that it was that good, and I believe that's what should be happening, because he's a star over there. So, you know, along with his wife with the walkouts, you know, it just you have to put all the potentials there. So it's just awesome. I couldn't be more happier for him.
Of course, same here. But I just hope that, like you said, Todd, Yuta can be more consistent with his wins, just as I hope that RIZIN can consistently book him. But in order for him to fight now, in order for him to gain attention now, he's going to have to basically showcase himself against maybe some foreign competition. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, you know, it's who can they get, and, you know, stuff like that. Maybe, you know, I'm just saying in general, as a general thing, I'm not saying he has to fight this person. I'm saying who can RIZIN get a new foreign athlete, not necessarily for him to fight, but just in general. Mokaev is one. I think maybe they could get the guy that got cut from the UFC for fighting with his opponent in the hotel.
You mean
maybe he could have a run in RIZIN, you know?
That's interesting you bring that up, Todd. Shingo, when they under a tweet talking about RIZIN signing Mokaev, who was, if fans that don't know, he was a UFC flyweight, undefeated UFC flyweight with a kind of a grinding wrestler style, right? That was just cut from the UFC because, you know, they don't want to, they say he's a pain in the butt and all this other stuff because he was trying to sell the fighting with Manel Cape outside of the ring, or the cage, I should say. And that's the excuse they're giving for not recent. I think it's probably because he's just asking for more money or whatever. And you know, or they're trying to, you know, John Fitch him. You know how they got rid of John Fitch, even though John Fitch was on a massive win streak because he had too much of a grinding wrestling style. That could be another reason why they got rid of him. But you're absolutely right, Todd, as a prime candidate because he signed. But to get back to my point,
yeah.
Shingo under what? Go ahead.
I think the UFC cut John Fitch because he was boring. Mokaev because it was said, oh, we're gonna. Well, actually, it was said behind the scenes that, you know, they were thinking about. Well, actually, it was said behind the scenes. Mokaev's team wanted to get Mokaev to go to the PFL. It was they basically leaked the quiet part out loud, and now Ray Sefo is saying, "Oh, we don't want to get him, brother. He's a pain in the ass, brother." And now Shingo Kashiwagi is waving the white flag, and I don't know. Maybe it's just him saying that, even though I know that he's Nobuyuki Sakakibar's right-hand man, and I respect him, as do we. But still, though, Mokaev's got very few options to go. I mean, aside from the European promotions like Octagon, ACA, and KSW, I mean, there's not really that many promotions with big enough pockets to sign him but RIZIN.
Exactly, and we don't. That's what I was trying to get at. Under the tweet about Mokaev signing with RIZIN, Shingo Kashiwagi just posted white flags. What does that mean? We don't know if that means that he's surrendering on signing him, or if he's giving in, you know, to say, okay, we'll sign him. You know what it depends on? It depends on how much money Mokaev is asking for. If Mokaev is asking for, you know, a bunch of money, forget it. But if he's not, if it's kind of affordable, get him, because imagine Mokaev versus Kyoji Horiguchi. That would totally bring legitimacy, that you know, and a revenge factor, because, you know, the UFC denied signing Horiguchi because they didn't want to pay him what he's worth, but they picked up Kai Asakura for a bargain because Kai wants to go to UFC, right? So that could be, you know, if Kyoji fights Mokaev and absolutely dusts him, then, you know, that could be Kyoji's would say, hey, look, I just took out one of your top 5 undefeated flyweight contenders that you didn't want to sign because he was too boring or whatever, a problem child or whatever. So, you know, that could give legitimacy to Kyoji and the flyweight title. So even if they only sign him for like 1 or 2 fights, if he's affordable, I think they should do it.
Of course. But then again, you have to realize this. Obviously, Mokaev, Russian originally. He's fighting out of the UK. I mean, if you want him to fight in Japan, it's going to take a hard bargain just to get him to and from London and to and from Tokyo. Right?
What if he's on an international event? Remember, Sakaki Barasan on the interviews said that the next international event, one of the destinations could be a MENA country, Middle East, North Africa. That's what MENA stands for. Could be, or Uzbekistan was another name that Sakaki Barasan said. That region right there. What if Mokaev is on there as a headliner? I mean, I can see it happening. You know, a title fight with Kyoji on an international event in a MENA country or Uzbekistan. Hey, I mean, and that could also be a destination for guys like Karimov if they have, you know, a felony on his record. So, so I'll speak of Karimov and the guys, the Azerbaijan fighters, because that's where the Epic Rizin's first international event was, Azerbaijan. Tofik Musayev, top 5 ranked Bellator lightweight. Now, that's another prime candidate for the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event as well. So, and look at the comment that Drew posted. What happens if Moke beats Horiguchi? Then RIZIN's got a new flyweight champion. But I don't see that happening. I think Kyoji beats Mokaev. I think Kyoji's better in every aspect.
It's a big step up. It would be a big step up for Mokaev, I think.
Absolutely. Because remember, Horiguchi beat Manel Cape. It not only beat him, finished Manel Cape. And Mokaev couldn't, had a close fight with Manel Cape right now. And, so it's just Horiguchi would be a different level for him. So I think that would be, and I think that'd be a no. If his price is, let me stress that, if the price is reasonable, if he's asking for a bunch of money, forget it. Let him go to ACA or Octa or KSW even. Just let him go somewhere else. Don't waste money on the kid if he's trying to get a bunch of freaking money. So but if his price is reasonable, get him definitely.
Mm-hmm. But Andrew was also saying, if better signings and fighters money towards, use that money to keep Karshiga Doubtbeck and Chadolayev.
Oh, I kind of agree, but at the same time, we just lost. The UFC just poached one of our flyweight contenders. They're talking about the signing, so we need to replace that with another flyweight contender, which Mokaev is.
So that would probably disqualify Hiromasa Okikubo, who just defeated Makoto Shinryu Takahashi, as a contender. Because
we don't want. Nobody wants to see Kyoji versus Oji Kubo 5, 6, or 7, whatever number we're at right now.
I mean,
it's 5.
But I feel the same way that nobody wants to see Horiguchi versus Shinryu 3.
Well, technically it's only 2 because the first fight doesn't really count because it was a no contest eye poke 20 seconds in, right? It's kind of like the same thing with Barnett and or was it Barnett or was it Crow Cop? Anyways, there was one was a headbutt and it wasn't like the Fader and Big Nog headbutt that happened where they had to it was a no contest in the Grand Prix and they rescheduled for the end of the year for the final.
Herring versus Yoshihiro Nakao from like 20 years ago.
Wait, say that again. Sorry, cut out a little bit. Which one?
I'm trying to say Heath Herring versus Yoshihiro Nakao from 20 years ago.
No. It was either Crow Cop or Barnett, where they had a trilogy where they had to extend it because of a quick headbutt or stoppage, and then also the Fader, one of the greatest Grand Prix of all time, 2004 heavyweight Grand Prix, Fader Emelianenko and Big Nog, Minotauro Nogueira. They in their semifinals a final, I think it was, or anyways, in their fight during the Grand Prix, their first one, it ended on a head clash, but it was like a couple minutes into it, so it wasn't the same as like a first minute head clash or eye poke like what happened with Kyoji Horiguchi and Shinryu in the first bout. So to me, they've only had one bout so far. So even though it would technically be the third bout if they rematch them, I like that more than Oji Kubo going in for the 4th or 5th time, whatever it is, for Kyoji to beat him. So, and you know what? If they're going to do that, then it's got to be part of a Grand Prix, a flyweight Grand Prix. Have that be, if they're going to do a Kyoji versus Oji Kubo 5 or whatever it is, it's got to be the quarterfinals to a flyweight Grand Prix. That's the only way I'll accept it. Otherwise, it's just going to be, it's like, why are you doing this again? What Mokaev is right out there unless he's too expensive. I mean, and I think Shinryu, he's got to have he's a win away from because he just lost to Oji Kubo. Is that the next fight you want to talk about, by the way, Jay Krish?
But I mean, we pretty much already talked about it in full, discussing flyweights going from one promotion to the next. And by the way, Andrew was also saying, Mokaev was going to use RIZIN as a way to get back to the UFC. It continued that RIZIN.
So what? So what, Drew? So what? After Kyoji scrubs him up, who cares? We just need Kyoji to get the shine to steal his UFC top 5 ranking. That's what we want from Mokaev, to give some legitimacy in the eyes of the casual fans, the casual UFC fans, to rediscover Kyoji Horiguchi and be like, oh wow, there is a top 5, top talent outside the UFC, and we know that, the hardcores know that, but the UFC casuals, that the mainstream fake news, mainstream media is trying to protect the UFC from knowing about the epic RIZIN, they would take notice if Kyoji scrubbed up Mokaev and sent them back to UFC or wherever afterwards. So that's what we're talking about signing Mokaev. But if he's affordable,
I wouldn't guarantee that. If RIZIN can somehow continue their momentum and they're drawing large crowds and they can capitalize off of this, there's no guarantee some of these guys will go back to the UFC because they're fighting in front of bigger crowds that appreciate fighters, unlike, a lot of the American crowds. And, they're treated better by the promotion. There's reason. I mean, Horiguchi didn't go back to the UFC.
That was because of money, apparently.
Right. But also, maybe he sees that, this is picking up. I can stay here,
No, great. Andrew is.
We don't need the casual fans to watch it. The Japanese audience can carry this fine. When I was talking about trying to get attention on a card for boxing, they could get back in Tokyo Dome with him.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So these are things I'm putting out is how do you capitalize on what you just had? How do you hit the next home run?
I mean,
not the next single, the next home run,
Yes, exactly. But if anything, when it comes down to RIZIN, I can definitely see what will possibly happen in the boxing world as an example. Not the whole Riyadh season bullshit, but the potential for a Junto Nakatani versus Naoya Inoue fight card happening maybe at the Tokyo Dome. I'm not sure, but still, though.
Right.
Inoue already sold out the Tokyo Dome. The match with Tenshin Nasukawa already sold out the Tokyo Dome. RIZIN didn't get their chance to sell out the Tokyo Dome because they were still going through the after effects of COVID in 2021 when they were trying to do a Tokyo Dome show, even though it was the first MMA show at that venue since 2003. But I can definitely see RIZIN boosting up their presentation, so to speak, if they want to basically compete with boxing in Japan. I mean, because, Andrew's saying, casual fans are not going to watch casual UFC fans are not going to watch RIZIN because it's like the Japanese LFA.
I disagree completely.
Oh, great. The only way casual UFC fans care is if Gabby Garcia has a fight against an old woman. And
I agree with you too.
I mean,
Wolf. UFC fans watched Pride when they signed some of their best fighters away. That's what would make it happen. That's what it would take. You know what I mean? But they did. Once that happened, they watched. They cared.
That's it. That's how I found out about Pride FC. It was a 2000 Grand Prix where they brought over Hoist Gracie, where they brought over Mark Coleman, right? These UFC names. Oh, go ahead, J. Krish. What do you say?
When they brought over Ken Shamrock.
Yes, Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man. Yeah, yes. That's how Western fans, international fans, found out about Pride. Pride was going on, had shows before that 2000 Grand Prix. I didn't even know about it. I didn't even know about it at the time. I was a casual UFC fan because they had taken away the rules, neutered what the original UFC awesomeness was all about, and they put in a bunch of rules and stuff that made it shitty. And so, anyways, I was a casual UFC fan at the time. But seeing the UFC stars going over to Japan, I was like, whoa, what is this? Well, and it's available on DirecTV? Oh, let me check this out. And that's from there on, it was all she wrote. I was like, I was hooked. I was hooked. And that's what we're trying to do yes, Mokaev is not as exciting as those original UFC stars were, but the casual UFC fans know who he is, know about this story of him getting cut from the UFC, blah, blah, blah. And it would actually garner some attention. Say, he's fighting over in Japan. And if he loses to Kyoji, that would get the attention of some casual UFC fans. And what if on that card? Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna say something, J. Krish?
Of course.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what if on that card there was some superior rule set action that hooked those a small portion of casual fans that would actually tune into that? What if there was some superior rule set action on the rest of the card that hooked them, just like it did me for the Almighty Pride FC? Them saying, oh, them bringing back the one night Grand Prix, them having Hoist Gracie and Sakuraba fight unlimited rounds match, and Mark Coleman delivering ground and knees to win the Grand Prix title. The superior rule set is back from the original UFC. That's what hooked me in as a casual UFC fan at the time. What if that happened again? I mean, it doesn't have to happen massively. Just one a couple fans at a time. I mean, it hooks them in. Could hook them in for life. What's you saying here?
I don't think Andrew's understanding it here. Like, let's say they sign away. It could be anybody. I'll just make something up here. But, with the lawsuit going on, that's another thing. If they make more concessions to their contract, there could be more free agency with UFC fighters. And let's say they signed away a Max Holloway or whoever. It doesn't matter who it is. Now those fans are going to be like, wait a minute, how did they get him? And they're going to go look and see who this is. What? There's a promotion in Japan that can actually sign away somebody like this. How is that possible? And they're going to go and look. And Makayev, here's another thing I would say. If I was his manager, I wouldn't fight Horiguchi right away. Like he's saying, superior rule set action. Let him get in there. Let him work some grounded knees. He's a wrestler. He's from Dagestan. He also has like 2 million followers on Instagram. He's got a big following from the Muslim audience, and he's not a guy who has 300,000. He's got 2 million. For example, Max Holloway is 4. So he's not far off from some big stars, and so he does have a large following from living in England, from being from Dagestan, Muslim world. He's got a lot of people following him. And if you get him in there in some superior rule set matches, and he starts to work some wrestlers, that's a real beneficial ground and knees for wrestlers and stuff. And let me win 2 or 3 fights, and then if I win, I can fight Horiguchi. Let the fans get to know me a little bit.
Now, about the casual fans, do you think that they would care about the fact that Hideo Tokoro was on his way close to retirement? Because he was on his way closer to retirement before the fight against Hiroya Kondo. And I got to tell you, watching Tokoro fight, hearing Michael Schiavello on commentary just basically, gaze at the brilliance of Tokoro. It almost felt like watching an old dream card on HD Net again. But still, though, it didn't take Tokoro long to beat up Hiroya Kondo, about 3 minutes, 20 seconds, grounded elbows to continue his MMA career as legendary as it is. No, Andrew saying one more. The one person who can make a prime difference for RIZIN is Conor McGregor, maybe John Jones. I'd say Conor.
He's got a point.
But still,
Conor's only got 2 fights left, though. Oh, go ahead, J. Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, Conor does have 2 fights left. But when is he going to have them? That's the main question. Anyways,
I don't think he'll fight on RIZIN, but he's with BKFC. He might appear at a RIZIN show. And
exactly.
If he can get in the country.
And what if those 2 fights, he completes those 2 fights? What if the Epic RIZIN offers him some kind of pay-per-view incentives, more than what he would get with the UFC pay-per-views? Right? Because, I mean, that's one of the big things for the Epic RIZIN is that they have proven they are a pay-per-view viable company. They get more pay-per-views than anybody else besides the UFC, right? That's even the Bloody Elbow people had a tweet out saying that makes them arguably the number 2 promotion in the world because their pay-per-view status.
Elbow before bastardized.
Yes. This was a year and 6 months ago that this was tweeted out. That by one of the Bloody Elbow people before all that happened was that based on revenue generated from pay-per-view buys and attendance, like Todd Atkins is saying, RIZIN is number 2 right now in the world. RIZIN is number 2 promotion in the world, and they only have like WEC divisions, right? The lighter weight divisions. They don't even have bigger divisions yet. And told Todd.
They haven't cared about bigger divisions since Yuri Prohaska left.
Exactly. Since the pandemic, right? They had bigger divisions before the pandemic hit, and then now after the pandemic, it's like they're slowly getting it back. But Todd doesn't want to bring this up. Did you see also in the intermission announcements
But
that Sakuraba?
before we continue to talk about what happened in the intermissions, I just want to ask, Tokoro, how
Oh
long?
yeah, yeah.
Yes, Hideo Tokoro defeating Hiroya Kondo. How long do you think he has in his career if he can continue to win like how he did against Kondo?
I mean, that was a sensational win, probably the feel-good moment of the night. It was so beautiful seeing him bring his family in afterwards. And like you were saying when we first talked about that fight, Chevello going crazy on the mic, just ecstatic at the victory of Tokoro. And also, this is a great time to bring up that it was ringside commentary. So it wasn't Zoom commentary. So Chevello and Damian Brown, they could go crazy and go, shout and stuff on the mic, and it wouldn't blow out our speakers like the Zoom commentary would. And it was in sync and everything. Just a huge shout out to, I guess, Abima was the one that made a ringside commentary happen again. So I just absolutely love that. I hope it continues. And in this fight in particular, we saw the dividends of that. Tokoro actually scoring a knockout, making Chevello go crazy on the mic. It was just added to the whole. It was one of the feel-good moments of the year, if not the best feel-good moment of the year. Remember how in the previous shows we were talking about Imanari beating Majima as the old man feel-good moment of the year? This topped that, and it was just so sensational to see. And to answer your question, Jay Krish, if he wins, we don't know if he's retired or not, right? He didn't say nothing about it. He said he was going to retire if he lost, but he didn't. So he's probably going to fight again. And you're asking how long can he fight? I'm guessing until he loses again. Probably his next loss will be his retirement. He'll say, okay, there's the loss. Now I'm going to retire. But if he keeps winning, he should still fight, right? If he's still proving he can do it, then why not? Unless he wants to retire off a win, then unless his family says, hey, you need to stop, then I guess he'd be retiring off a win. But so far, I haven't heard nothing about that. And excuse me. Did y'all see his family in the ring afterwards?
Yeah.
His family they didn't look like they wanted him to stop. They were ecstatic for him. They were very supportive, it looked like. So I don't know. To answer your question, Jay Krish, no, I see him continuing until he loses. And it was a sensational, arguably one of the knockout of the nights and the feel-good moment of the year. It was beautiful. All around beautiful. From the commentary to the knockout to everything. It was sensational. I loved it.
Mm-hmm. And Todd, when it came down to this particular fight, I mean, again, I say the casual fans probably wouldn't care much about this, but they love a feel-good story. Do you think that Hideo Tokoro's career so far in this stage is like a feel-good story?
Well, I mean, let's see. That's something we were talking about with Manny, right? How Jay was saying he was coming on, the last couple rounds, right, or whatever. Experience is a great equalizer, and Tokoro has had God knows how many fights. If we look on his thing here, for example, I know he's had
anything
a ton. 70 total fights.
Yeah, you can pretty much say that Hideo Tokoro has been fighting since Hiroya Kondo was, as us old folks like to say, knee-high to a grasshopper.
Right. So, I mean, he's had 70 fights. He probably has more fights than I'd probably say 90% of the people they're fighting in any promotion.
Mm-hmm.
He has more fights than. So when you have that kind of experience, like Manny does, and sometimes that can be a great equalizer when you're up against someone that maybe people didn't necessarily expect you to, or a guy who's bigger in Manny's case, and Tokoro's hugely experienced. His technique is super high level. Even though he's older, he's still like Barrett Yoshida, who I used to train with. Barrett Yoshida's older than me. He's almost 50, and he's still beating guys, a lot of really good guys, in jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? And that's because of his ability, his technique, his knowledge, his experience. It's not because he can do all the things he could do when he's 20 years old. It's just his brilliance. And Barrett is really close with Tokoro. They trained a lot when Barrett lived in Japan. And so they're similar in that way. I think Tokoro can reach into that experience and he can do these kind of things.
I mean, come to think of it, you are right about that. But come to think of it, we were also mentioning foreign names that would come into the promotion. Now that Tokoro has pretty much, proven that he can still go at his age, I wouldn't mind seeing him go up. I mean, I wouldn't mind him inspiring guys like a Carlos Puente Jr., who we both know, or like Andrew Tennyson, who hasn't fought in a long ass while, to maybe get into prime shape just to fight in. I mean, not just fight in RIZIN, because we all know they're not going to get just anybody at RIZIN, but just to fight. Period.
Well, it's tough, guys who aren't making much money. It's hard, some of them when they're older to work up that motivation. But a guy like Tokoro to fight in front of almost 50,000 people and to keep going, it's probably easier for him than someone who's fighting at an indie casino for nothing.
Yeah, of course.
Why am I doing this? That's what those guys are thinking.
No.
The older guys that are fighting indie casinos are like, I mean, I talked to Dean Thomas the other day, and he was saying near the end of his career, and Dean Thomas is very successful. He's thinking, why am I still doing this? Because the money still wasn't significant at that time. It's just, why?
I mean, come to think of it, it's like what Bellator used to do when it came down to their partnership with Everlast. You got to figure out who do you fight for. I mean, in some cases, some people fight for money, others fight just for the love of the sport, others fight just because they want to get bitches. But still, though, when it comes down to the fight game at large, you just got to figure out what do you want to fight for. And apparently, in Tokoro's case, you want to fight for your legacy to be intact for the next generation. And speaking of that next generation, Jay, you did try to discuss it earlier. Taisei Sakuraba, the son of the legendary Kazushi Sakuraba, he's going to be possibly making his MMA debut at the end of the year for RIZIN.
And that's going to explode for them if he has success.
Yes.
That's going to be in the papers, the Japanese newspaper with the big colorful, that's going to be on there for sure. Sakuraba's son is coming, And
Todd, I wanted to ask you, do you think that one, you think he should be like his father and fight possibly a Gracie or another foreign international fighter as well?
I'll try to do that for sure, yeah.
Okay,
maybe
that's
a couple Japanese first, but then, yeah.
To me, that could be a prime candidate for what we think is going to be the way they won up this Super RIZIN 3 event is the Bellator collaboration on New Year's Eve, the collaboration mega event. And what if it's Sakuraba's son versus one of the Gracies that Bellator has under contract? Now, I mean, that'd be too. I think that'd be a hell of a debut for a kid, the Sakuraba's son. So maybe you're right about it being, maybe he should fight a Japanese fighter or two first to get some experience. But I mean, hey, the storyline would be there, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and Sakuraba was one of the guys who really ignited Pride to a next level. So if his son has success, I have no doubt that would be huge for them at all. No doubt.
And that's what they're going to try to do next year, Todd. Exactly your timeline and what you're saying. If they follow up the Super RIZIN 3 mega event with the New Year's Eve mega event that also scores over 40,000 plus fans in attendance and untold amount of pay-per-view buys, that their momentum going into 2025 would be massive. And imagine if Sakuraba's son is successful on New Year's Eve, and then next year could be when they do the international bout with him, like they did with Sakuraba. I mean, it's just it's there. It could be happening next year, exactly like your time frame is saying, Todd. It could happen by next year that it could be back. And Jay Krish, when you were talking about what do you fight for, who do you fight for? You reminded me of a Pride VTR back in the day. I don't know which Pride it was for, but Sakuraba or one of them was on there going, "What do you fight for at the end of the day? It's pride." I don't know if you guys remember that VTR, but it was awesome. So,
and I want to say this, RIZIN, not just RIZIN, but maybe PFL. These promoters are sitting around to wait and see what happens with this lawsuit.
yes,
They're waiting
there could be massive free
Yeah,
agents.
exactly. There's
And like Todd,
sharks in the water, so to speak.
yes, and perfect for you to be on this show right now to talk about this, since you were the one that broke the news about it. The Bellator sale. Remember, in your initial report was that Bellator was just going to happen this year, and then was going to be phased out and phased into the UFC next year. I mean, excuse me,
PFL.
The PFL. Yes, sorry. So it was going to be phased out and phased into the PFL next year. So there could, and PFL does not have all the different weight divisions. There could be, and the UFC's lawsuit could be coming to a head next year or at the end of this year. So next year could be a massive free agency period, the biggest we've ever seen, probably even bigger than possibly when the Almighty Pride FC got sabotaged. So I mean, it'd be huge, it'd be massive, exactly like you're saying. And
if I saw doesn't come up with a passable settlement, then they'll go to trial in October.
Yeah,
that's
so
deal.
So it's October. Okay. I was wondering what the timeline was. So then that means that trial in October, possibly by the end of the year, we could know what was going on with this UFC lawsuit, how it's going to affect them and the contracts and stuff like that. And if New Year's Eve is the last Bellator show, and if they do phase Bellator into PFL next year, all those divisions they don't have, I mean, there's going to be a massive free agency period.
Andrew, you're right that it can go for many years as far as appeals, but the court case isn't going to last that long. The actual trial.
Yeah, 100%. And also, Drew had a great comment we didn't touch on earlier, saying an opponent for Sakuraba's son could be Kron Gracie if he's a free agent. I wouldn't be opposed to stuff like that, because Kron also inexperienced MMA and is primarily a grappler. I'm talking about guys like, don't match him up with like who's the other Gracie that's in Bellator right now, the middleweight Gracie.
And he's somebody I wouldn't put him against.
That'd be too much of a step up. You know what I mean? So I like the idea of Kron. Just want to give Drew a shout out for finally a good comment. So, but to get back to what you were saying about this free agency period, what happens with the lawsuit? If it's going to trial in October, they can't appeal it that much anymore, right? It'll probably be done by the end of the year, or we'll get some clarity at least by the start of next year, right?
Well, they could appeal it after the fact, but the decision would already be done by then.
Yeah.
Whether they're found guilty or innocent, then they could start appealing. Yeah.
Yes. So there's what we're saying, Drew, or what Todd is saying, is that there's no more delay tactics that can happen. The trial is happening in October. That's when it starts. And the ruling could happen before the end of the year, and then they could appeal the ruling. And that still, the ruling will have already happened. And then, but the appeal would not take all of 2025. So the massive free agency period could be happening in 2025 is what we're saying. And it's super, right at the time when RIZIN is elevating itself to the level of Pride 2.0. If New Year's Eve, if they get the momentum, have another 40,000 plus crowd with another Bellator versus RIZIN super show, dude, like Todd is saying, the momentum is there for the Japanese resurgence. This is super exciting, you guys. I'm getting more excited just talking about it, thinking about all this. This is amazing.
To address what Andrew said, the trial was already delayed 10 years. This judge is the one who fast-tracked it. So there isn't any more delaying of the actual trial. They're either going to come up with a better settlement, which will be more money and more concessions. Money won't be enough. The judge has already shown that money's not going to be enough. The reason he denied it is he looked at the judge. These judges know more than the lawyers. They're just as knowledgeable about the law, if not more, than any lawyer is. And he's looked at the evidence. He knows that the UFC is guilty of antitrust violation. Everybody knows that. That's the worst kept secret in the sport. And that's why he's fast-tracked this trial, and that's why he turned down this last settlement. They're either going to make a settlement for more money and more concessions, because that's got to be part of it, or they're going to go to trial in October, and that's all there is to it.
Yes.
But then again, we won't know really anything about all this until that trial happens, and if it gets a fair and balanced result, which of course, that's basically like saying, hey, I'm gonna hope to find a new wife and a new kids and a new life, but it basically is gonna work over. But basically, you got to work overtime for what you get.
Right, but it's a huge risk for both. If the
Mhm.
fighters lose, they could get nothing. But if the UFC loses, they're going to lose a lot more than the settlement. They'll lose way more money than what they put up. Way more.
And that's why, Todd, what you were saying is key. They could settle before trial even happens in October. There could be a settlement with more concessions and more money that happens before the trial even happens. I'm just, Todd, I'm loving the smackdown you're laying on Drew's pessimism here.
No.
It's awesome.
Drew, what you said, Zach Arnold actually brought this up. He thinks there's going to be a big kind of smear campaign coming now that this lawyer has sidetracked their settlement agreement. That they're really going to go after this lawyer now. They may even bring in PIs to try and bring him down. I don't think it'll work, but there'll definitely be a smear campaign now for sure.
Yeah, they're going to try and bring in PIs, but none of them are magnums. By the way, Andrew said, do you think Dana White saying he went to high school with the judge as a way to get a new judge?
No, he's bringing that up. This is part of what Zach was talking about. And Zach even referenced it on Twitter because he said it on my show. He said, this first time I'm going to say this publicly, but I think we're getting ready to see they're really going to go after this judge now because he sidetracked their settlement agreement. They thought, even one of the UFC lawyers had even put it on his bio that he had achieved a settlement agreement for the UFC in this lawsuit. He already had it on his bio. It's done. That's how dumb these guys were. The judge came back. He probably saw that too. I would be surprised the judge saw that and said, these guys are so arrogant. They're already putting this in as a done deal. The UFC lawyers already have this on their LinkedIn bio and all this other nonsense. I haven't approved this, and he didn't.
Of course.
I love it. And you're absolutely right. It's going to be a massive smear campaign, just like, and that's Dana White Zuffa 101. Okay, y'all, everybody remembers the Strike Farce smear campaign against Strike Force and Scotty Cokes, right? They also had one that many people don't remember, but I do because I was in the middle of it. And they were bullying us online during the almighty Pride FC days after Pride FC was sabotaged. Online, there was a smear campaign against Pride. They literally tried to say that Pride was a minor league, and they tried to cover up that Anderson Silva, once he started going on his run to become one of the greatest fighters of all time in UFC, he was a Pride fighter. He was a middle of the pack Pride fighter as well, and they actively covered that up. And it was just, man, you guys think that the Strike Farce smear campaign was the only one? No, it goes back farther than that. That's been Dana White and Zuffa's MO since the beginning. That's what they do. And you remember, they even got caught with it. Remember when they were on Spike TV, a leaked email said from a Spike exec to a UFC exec saying, flood the boards, posing as fans to drive narratives, right? So they are well-versed in smear campaign tactics. And you're absolutely right, Todd. Arnold's absolutely right. They're going to go after this guy 100%. And I just hope that this guy is ready and will not budge 1 inch. And I hope that he was pissed off by the arrogance of the UFC lawyers. And I hope that just gives him the resolve to see this through and get a better settlement for the fighters and the fans, actually, because you're absolutely right. The biggest, worst kept secret is that the UFC is a monopsony for sure. So it's just, man, I just can't wait to see what happens. And it just gets me so excited even talking about it with you guys. This is awesome. I can't wait to see what happens.
Contracts are illegal, not just that, And what he had put on his bio was achieved a favorable settlement for the UFC in antitrust lawsuit. It hadn't even been approved yet, and he had already put that in his bio.
Would that be considered tampering, though?
No, that's trying to affect the judgment. The judgment was already, it just wasn't approved, and the judge probably. So what Todd is theorizing is that the judge saw the arrogance of this UFC lawyer taking a victory lap before it was even finalized, before it was even approved, and was like, "Hey, wait a minute, No,
That's probably
actually.
contributed to it. I don't think that was just it. I think he looked at it
Okay.
and said, there's no concessions here. You want to give a little measly amount of money and continue doing what you're doing. That's not what this trial's about. The trial's about the fact that you're a monopoly and you're guilty of violations, which, if he looks at the evidence, he knows that. Judges aren't stupid. And so that was just part of it. I think really he's looked at the evidence and said, look, I'm not going to let you cough up a few bucks and then continue doing what you're doing. Otherwise, there's no reason to even bring this lawsuit in the first place. You're going to have to give up more of both money and this, or I'm not approving squat. And I think that's the way he looked at it.
Nice. I love it. Oh man, it's good. I can't wait to see how it plays out, Todd. It's going to be awesome. That's fantastic analysis on that, and laying the smack it down on Drew's pessimism over how awesome this actually is.
Of course. Now let's go ahead and go back to the card because we got 4 more fights to talk about. First up, Ryusei Ashizawa, the Catfish, beat up Koji Tanaka via unanimous decision. Of course, both men are now 1-1, and that kind of dates back to the whole thing of kickboxers. And, we can also talk about this. Yaman, Ren Sugiyama, knocking out Hiroaki Suzuki, 3 minutes, 28 seconds of round number 1. It was like that old NBC series Heroes. Save the girl, save the world. Well, I'm pretty end up saving the girl off of $10,000 US bottles of champagne. But when it comes down to these kickboxing crossovers, I mean, Ren Yaman Sugiyama, and yes, I'm calling full name.
And Kubo.
Yeah, Yuta Kubo, Yaman, Ren Sugiyama. When it comes down to these kickboxing crossovers, I know we mentioned about Yuta Kubo earlier. I know we're probably going to mention it about, you know what, the hell with it. We'll also mention Reina Kubota knocking out Kate Lotus Oyama. 4 minutes.
The shootboxing goddess, as Jay Chris has coined.
4 minutes, 18 seconds of round number 2, stopping Kate Oyama in her tracks. But when it comes down to these kickboxing and shootboxing crossovers, do you think that, in addition to obviously Ren Hiromoto, Todd, that do you think that these kickboxing crossovers probably might be the future to RIZIN success?
It could be. I mean, shootboxing is one of my favorite promotions when I lived there. I watched a lot of shootboxing shows at Crockwell Hall because it's outside of Pride and maybe Shuto, it's probably my 3rd favorite promotion to watch, and they had a lot of good fighters. Andy Sauer was beating a lot of them back then, but they had a lot of good Japanese fighters in shootboxing, and it's a very exciting promotion to watch. And, like you're saying with Arena and some of these, Japan does have a good atmosphere to bring kickboxers along, shootboxing, etc., kickboxing, K1, all that kind of stuff. K1 Max was just, come back and all that. So, yeah, I think there's a group to pick from, that's vast.
And
so it's definitely a source of good fighters, kickboxing and shootboxing and all that.
But come to think of it, and I don't know if you've seen either of the fights that we just mentioned, Yaman versus Suzuki, Reina versus Kate Lotus, and Ashizawa versus Tanaka. But out of all 3 of these fights, which one do you think had the most tenacity out of the 3, Todd?
I didn't see the matches. I haven't watched the show yet, actually. But
you gotta do that, brother. It was awesome.
Okay, so I can go ahead and ask you, Jay, out of the 3 fights that I just mentioned, which one do you think showed the most tenacity?
They were all 3 bangers, and I don't want to. Why are we lumping them all together? We should do them one by one. I mean, the Catfish versus
We don't have much time left. Well, I wouldn't say we don't have much time left because I'm trying to go at least until 8:30, 8:45 my time. But still, though.
Yeah. There's plenty of time. This is the long form review show here, and we got a fantastic guest from the MMA Conspiracy Hour. Let's go. But anyways, to answer your question, they were all 3 bangers, but the Catfish Ashizawa versus Cozy was the banger of the bangers, banger of the night. It was the fight of the night, a fight of the year candidate between 2 kickboxing crossovers. How great is that to see? And to answer your question, yes. The J-Kick crossover, the kickboxing crossover is sensational again. Just like it was back in the Almighty Pride FC days with Mirko Cro Cop, Mark Hunt, all Sammy Schilt. I guess he was original UFC too as well. So, I mean, look, all these kickboxing crossovers are absolutely fantastic. And RIZIN has had a relationship with J-Kick and kickboxing since their inception. You know, it was like Tommy bringing up Tenshin Nasukawa. He's a kickboxing crossover. And you guys brought up earlier about the match last year, the massive show, or 2 years ago, the massive show of Tenshin Nasukawa versus Takeru. So they're the 2 biggest kickboxers at the time. Also, Sakakibara-san, CEO of RIZIN, helped promote that event and make it the biggest Japanese combat sports event of this modern new era. You know, sold over 50,000 plus fans in attendance. 500,000 plus pay-per-view buys in Japan. Just a massive, massive card. And that was all kickboxing, right? So there is a massive synergy going on right now. And also, you know, Todd, you brought up King K1 kickboxing. Michael Chiavallo is the voice of King K1 International right now. He does all the pay-per-view, the international pay-per-views for King K1. Michael Chiavallo is the announcer, the commentator for that. They even are collaborating with announcers for us, bringing over Chiavallo, maybe even Abima with the J-Kick connection, King K1 connection had a hand in that too. So I absolutely love the synergy with it, and also it was just so great to see all these kickboxers doing so well on the Super RIZIN 3 card right here. And we'll just take one fight at a time. Catfish and Cozy. Just a banger of the bangers. It was sensational watching them go. They left it all in the ring. I mean, Cozy was bloodied up. It was a narrow decision victory for Catfish. Can't wait to see what's next for him. And Cozy, just, I mean, another great J-Kick crossover fighter. Can't wait to see him fight again as well. Both men, to me, there was no losers in that bout. It was so exciting. Both men came out as winners, even though Catfish is the winner on the judges' scorecards. And moving on, you know, Cozy can move on as well, but he's got to face somebody, you know, next coming off a loss as well. But just what a banger of a fight! Just absolutely loved it. And then Yaman, you know, if you want to lump these all together real quick, Jay Krish, Yaman, like you said on Drew's We Are RIZIN podcast, I loved how you coined this for him. Yaman was fighting for love. I absolutely love that you said that. Well, go ahead. What are you saying?
That he was fighting for love, dude.
Yeah, he was, but I mean, it's he's got to stop simping for this girl and spending all kinds of ridiculous money on her. When the woman doesn't want you, no matter how much money you spend, you can't buy love, as the Beatles or John Lennon famously said, right? So, you know, you can't. Yaman's got to stop wasting, becoming simpmon, as Drew coined. He's got to stop. Just be Yaman. I mean, that whole fight was insane. Look at his pick from all the walkout girls he had. He had the walkout of the night, exactly like we were talking about on the preview show. Walkout of the night with Vegas showgirls dancing. I mean, it was sensational. And then the fight, yeah, he fought for love and he scored a sensational knockout for love. That was one of the knockouts of the night, if not the most brutal knockout of the night. Face planted his opponent, and the camera kept panning to his girl. Or his girl that he wants, in that is, you know, scored, you know, super expensive $1,000 seat tickets for in the crowd, and they kept showing her and her reaction. She was going crazy for him. It was just awesome. So hopefully, Ren will get the girl that he wants, but he shouldn't be just, stop trying to buy it, Ren. Not Ren, excuse me, Yaman. Stop trying to buy it, Yaman. Just, if she doesn't want it, you got to move on. But sensational performance by him, sensational knockout. Just absolutely loved it. And then, Jay Chris, I don't want to condense Striker Queen Reina, the shoot boxing goddess, into a segment with lumping in three other fights together. I mean, come on, she's got to be by herself This is Drew already rushed me through talking about her on the We Are Rising podcast. Don't do the same here. Do you want to say anything else before we let's do that fight individually?
No, I'll make a point here when you talk about Rena, or these fighters. Pride. This one thing Pride made a mistake about. When I lived there, they had Hiroki Shishido, who was an incredible fighter who fought for shoot boxing. They had Kenichi Ogata. They had a bunch of guys from Caesar Gym that were just outstanding fighters, and they were only fighting in shoot boxing. Those guys were not making much money at all. Pride could have brought one of those. They were outstanding fighters, all three of them, and that's now you see RIZIN has realized that, but before those guys have always been there. They've always been there, and now they're utilizing some like Rena or some, but those guys back then could have had a huge impact had they been given a chance.
Maybe that could have saved Dream if Dream would have brought some of them in, right? Maybe that could have saved Dream. Right. So, I mean,
Megumi Fuji, they could have, but they would have loved to have tried though.
And also they had the big mistake of Dream, I believe, is that they didn't go with the full superior rule set from the Almighty Pride FC. They watered it down and took out stomps and only allowed grounded, kind of like what One Championship does now, only allowing grounded knees and stuff. And the Japanese audience, they're not going to go from the superior rule set epicness of Almighty Pride FC to a watered down version in a cage, for a Dream. It's just the Japanese audience is not going to, and they didn't accept it. So I believe that was the most contributing factor. But you're right, Todd. They should have been utilizing all these shoot boxing people more so. I mean, the biggest show in Pride history was a combination of the Almighty Pride FC and King K1. I'm talking about the original Dynamite show. Sold over 91,000 fans. You were there.
Yeah.
Todd was there. Hey, Todd, confirm.
The first day I got there was the day that Japan beat Russia in the World Cup, 2002. And that summer was when they did the Yo-Yogi event. And yeah, I mean, that's why I'm saying I put this thing on Twitter, hot take. The Sphere will not be anything better than stuff that Pride has already done or RIZIN is doing as far as production goes. Pride already did a big K1 Pride. They already did a bigger show at Yogi than anything the Sphere could possibly. It's not going to be a those once in a lifetime events have already happened in Japan. The stuff Dana White's saying, he's full of it.
Yeah, totally full of it. And jealous. He's jealous of the Almighty Pride FC being bigger, and I love it watching the remember he was there commentating ringside for when Chuck Liddell got scrubbed up in Pride, and he left the ring, he threw the headset down, and he was never heard from again in Almighty Pride FC. He ran away, tail tucked like a whipped dog, ran away from Pride, welched on a bet, everything. Just, I mean, it was hilarious. That's probably Harvard's some resentment from Dingleberry Dana White, as I like to call him, to this day. And that's great that you were actually there at the original Dynamite, Todd. What an amazing experience. I'm sure you got pictures and like flyers and stuff, all kinds of memorabilia from that event. Wow. I mean, what an absolute treasure all those items would be. I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah. When Gracie supposedly tapped, like I could feel the air from the fans behind me, like just, when they got up and roared, like you could feel it's like wind blowing past.
That's awesome. Yeah. The roar of the crowd was so loud. It was like a windstorm behind.
And I mean, the Tap Nogueira fight, that's one of my favorite fights all time.
Yes.
It looked like he was going to get pounded, and he was, but he found a way to win the fight.
The one that Todd's talking about is the famous power bomb, where Bob Sapp at the beginning of the fight picked Nogueira up and power bombed him WWE style. It was awesome. Todd, I'm so jealous you were there and got to see that. That's freaking awesome.
Anderley was in the first fight. That should tell you how many high-profile fighters they had on the card. Yeah. Anderley was the first fight.
Yeah. And if RIZIN is only going to have 11 fights, that's how stacked they need to make it. Okay, they need to make it to where they're having a guy like Wanderlei Silva in the first fight, and the rest of the fights are just completely. Every single fight is a main event. If you're only going to do 11 bouts, and once every other month instead of one a month, and 14 plus bouts, for the subscription service, you gotta stack the events massively.
There, Jay. Reina Kubota was in the 4th fight of this card, so.
Yes, but remember, she was also on an injury replacement. Kate Lotus was an injury replacement. She was supposed to be like the main card of this Super RIZIN 3 was supposed to be a lot different than what it ended up being, right? Remember, Striker Queen Reina was supposed to fight Sika Izawa on the Super RIZIN 3 card for the atomweight title, and Izawa injured her foot. Remember, that's why she had to delay it and is fighting Kana Azakura in September 29th, a month and a half, 2 months from now, basically. So, also Chihiro Suzuki got hurt from the Manny Pacquiao fight, and also John Dodson. Remember, he was supposed to fight the bare knuckle guy that he drew with in the championship bout, and that was also supposed to be a championship bare knuckle fight. So the main card was supposed to be different.
He was supposed to fight Dagoberto Aguero again, but Aguero basically skipped town, said fuck this man, and went back to the damn DR, Dominican Republic.
Yeah, he was scared to come fight over because he knew it was like a Dotson home crowd, basically. So, but to get back to Striker Queen Reina, let's just cover this fight right now, because it was, this is one of my bangers of the night that I told y'all guys, make sure you watch this one, because Striker Queen Reina she's worth the price of admission alone. She's one of my favorite, if not my favorite, female mixed martial artists. She has beautiful technique, and she is a beautiful woman, even with her short hair. Did you guys see how pretty she looked? Even with her short hair, it was incredible. I'm talking about in the fight with no makeup on. This woman is just absolutely gorgeous, and her fight technique matches her beautifulness, her gorgeousness. We didn't even get to see the full display of it either. This is a woman that knows the assignment. She has the most beautiful flying stomp technique that we've seen since Shogun Hua. That's how good it is. I want to teach a seminar on it across all the gyms in Japan. That's how great Striker Queen Reina's flying stomps are. Her striking was on full display in this fight. That's why we call her Striker Queen. And, Shoot Boxing Queen is her official name. And I like how Jay Chris fixed up that to Shoot Boxing Goddess, because that's exactly what she is. She's just incredible. And credit to Kate Lotus. I want to give a big shout out to Kate Lotus as well for bringing the fight on a month notice, basically, still bringing a great fight to it. It takes 2 to tango in every single bout, right? Every single great bout. So credit to Kate Lotus for bringing the fight and giving the fans exactly what they asked for. When I loved how the Japanese fans were calling it the Japanese Beauty Showdown. Did y'all see that? I just love that, and it delivered the goods. And just a sensational striking flurry from Striker Queen Reina to finish it, and Kate Lotus showed incredible heart and actually did great because she busted up Reina's eye a little bit. Did you see that after the bout? Reina had like a mouse under her eye. So it was just a great fight. One of my finishes of the night. I can't say enough great things about it. I just love Striker Queen Reina. She's my favorite female fighter there is, and this fight exactly shows why. We just didn't see any superior rule set this bout, but possibly we will for the next fight. But one last thing about this fight. Mm-hmm. I loved how she had her hair in braids for her bangs, because in previous fights she was always wiping the hair out of her eyes, and it was very distracting. And Michael Chiavallo even said something about that on the mic during this fight, because she only had her bangs put, she didn't have her sides, so the sides are still getting in her. She had to fix her hair a bunch of times, and Michael Chiavallo was pointing out, hey, that's distracting. It's distracting her, and it was. Sometimes Kate Lotus was timing it to where when she would fix her hair, Kate Lotus was popping off a jab real quick and popping her right when she would fix her hair. So Striker Queen Reina, for the Izawa fight, just have your whole head in the cornrows, the braids, or whatever you want to call it. Just have your whole head of hair in those, so there's no more fidgeting, having to fix the hair and leaving yourself open. Because Siki Izawa, she'll capitalize on that. She's a dangerous fighter, more so than Kate Lotus. So you got to be prepared for that, Striker Queen Reina. But I mean, it's a sensational fight, sensational victory, and I want Kate Lotus to come back. I want she put on such a great performance. I want her back. And I can't wait to see what's next. I can't wait to see this title match. Hopefully, it's New Year's Eve. If Izawa dispatches of Kana Asakura with relative little damage, relative ease, like we all hope she will, she'll be on New Year's Eve against Striker Queen Reina, and I cannot wait.
That comes back to the experience thing I was talking about. Reina's been fighting for 17 years. She's had, I think, 66 total fights. Wow. This is the thing. I come back with Tokoro. Reina's super experienced, and that's a huge advantage a lot of times, regardless of your age. When you have that many fights,
and like all the other J kickers and kickboxing crossovers on this card, every single one of them showed incredible growth with their grappling and their takedown defense. Especially, I mean, Kubo is the most prime example by beating Yutaka Saito, but every single kickboxing crossover really showed great growth in their takedown defense and grappling. And this is a trend that's been happening this year. We saw Bay Noah in the Johnny Case fight that was supposed to be a punishment for him. He really showcased excellent takedown defense and grappling to actually win that fight and win this punishment fight. Incredible. And I mean, just. That's why for the main event of this Super RIZIN 3 event, I think there's a potential for Mikuru to come back and say, hey, I didn't get to test Ren's grappling enough. After they do the Saito fight for Mikuru, maybe he can come back and fight Ren again, and they can hype it saying, hey, it didn't go long enough, I didn't show enough grappling. Let's see who the real better fighter is, right? So, and you say, oh, it was a quick fluke knockout. There's ways to sell it. The rematch between Reina and Mikuru if he decides to come back. But just to finish up on the Striker Queen Reina bout, the kickboxing crossovers, they were fantastic on this card. It was incredible, and this whole year actually, it's been incredible to see.
Of course it has. I mean, to be honest, I don't think that Seiki Izawa's gonna beat Kana Asakura so easily. But then again, I wouldn't be surprised if that fight ends up being a real banger for Kana to retire her career off of.
Oh, so you think that Kana's going to come prepared? I don't know. I think that since she's been retired already, right? This is her quote unquote retirement bout, but she's already, let's face it, she's already been retired because she's been out for a while. She's sitting there, been talking about it, talking about it during the intermission, even saying, "Oh, I've been fighting since high school, and I'm, this is it." And so she's pretty much kind of like what Mikuru. What happened with Mikuru and Ren? So, you can't come into a bout with such a dangerous opponent with one foot out the door, right? So it's like, I mean, I just don't see her having a Tokoro performance in a retirement bout, especially against a fighter like Seiki Izawa. So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm hoping I'm not. I'm hoping Izawa dispatches her with ease, at least, doesn't take a lot of damage, and we can make this super fight with Striker Queen Reina happen on New Year's Eve for the collaboration mega event. Just add to it.
Yeah, of course. And, I mean, do we want to talk about the first fight of the night?
Yes.
Yes. Of course we do. Because we want to disparage Andrew even more by talking about his.
Yes. It's
Kazumasa Maijima, the former Rebel FC featherweight champion. I remember seeing this dude compete in Rebel FC and just make Miguel Angel Torres tap out on the way to a phenomenal first round submission streak. He went back to his old ways and made Suguru Ni tap out. 3 minutes, 11 seconds of round number 2 via rear naked choke. I'm pretty sure Andrew was devastated watching this fight play out because his favorite fighter took an L. But
yeah. He cried himself to sleep afterwards. Couldn't even finish watching live.
Of course. But, Todd, considering the fact that a lot of people don't know much about Kazumasa Maejima, I mean, I don't know if you either don't. I mean, I don't know if you don't know about Kazumasa Maejima either, but when you see him fight, what comes to mind from your point of view? Todd? Unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, Todd, your mic's muted.
Sorry. No, why don't you guys go ahead and talk about it? It's good.
Okay.
Oh, because you didn't see the bout yet?
Yeah, I haven't seen the bout yet. I was
Okay.
going to watch the whole event, but like I said, I saw a couple of them. I haven't got around to watching them all.
Okay, make sure you watch it.
It was worth it. I didn't realize you guys were going to talk about the card necessarily.
Yeah. This is the long form review where we're going to in depth into everything that happens on the card, everything surrounding the card, all the implications of the announcements, all the future. We're fantasy matchmaking for the future. We're fantasy predicting like stuff that like just predicting like future. Like we're talking about the UFC lawsuit, possibly Bellator going away next year, like you first reported. So, and making a massive free agency period next year, just stuff like that. That's what the long form review is for. But we are supposed to go through the whole card. And since you haven't watched the whole card, you gotta watch it, brother. It was sensational from start to finish. And with this first bout, it kicked it off really, really well. I mean, Majima was coming off the loss to Imanari. That was the first feel-good moment of the year for an old man fighter. Then Tokuro on Super RIZIN 3 card really just took it to the next level and took that feel-good moment of the year. The old man winning feel-good moment of the year. And just he took it. It's Tokuro's. And it's interesting to bring that up. Imanari and Tokuro, I think they should fight each other next and for an actual retirement match. I think it'd be a grappler's delight. It'd be fantastic. But anyways, getting back to this one, Majima just absolutely redeemed himself from losing to Imanari by he scrubbed up Knee. Let's be honest. He demolished Seguro Knee, and Knee was coming in really hyped. Drew was hyping him up on every single show. Drew was saying he wants him to be a title contender. I mean, the guy was a Pancrase champion, reigning Pancrase champion on a massive win streak.
He's not just a Pancrase champion; he is the current reigning featherweight king of Pancrase champion. You gotta say the whole thing just like that.
Yeah, and he got demolished. Majima destroyed him in one round. He could not hang with Majima. It was incredible to watch. I mean, on all the preview shows, we were saying, hey, Knee is going to come out here and really show why he's a contender. I mean, even on the City Life project with Aisha, we were talking about the booking odds, the bookmakers odds for this had Knee as a slight underdog. And we were like, oh, man, this is the easiest money you're going to make. This is the best dog bet on the entire card. And I mean, I'd take that in a second for Knee. And then he just comes out there and gets destroyed. Majima just comes out there and just absolutely annihilates him and kicks the card off in sensational fashion. So it was an incredible performance by Majima. And on such a massive card, now all those people are going to know that, hey, Majima, this is, he just destroyed the King of Pancrase champion. He's one to watch now in this division, right? So that's why they should have had more prospect fights on this card. I mean, this was the only one they really had, basically. All the rest were like J-Kick crossover, showcase bouts, right? So it's like I think they should have a couple more mixed martial arts bouts showcasing young up-and-coming fighters exactly like Majima. And for New Year's Eve, I'm sure they will. And for the next Super RIZIN 3 event, Super RIZIN 4 event next summer, I'm sure they will as well. They'll capitalize on all the huge audience that it brings. So, but this one, I mean, you can't say enough good things about Majima and his superior grappling, just destroying Knee in impressive fashion. And now Knee is nowhere near a title shot. Sorry, Drew. No, not happening. He can go back to Pancrase and defend his title first, right? And prove he's not. I mean, Knee is nowhere close to a RIZIN championship. So that's all I want to finish saying about that. But I do want to see Knee come back. I don't want to say just forget about him just because Majima scrubbed him up. No, Knee has a sensational grounded kick finish in his repertoire. So I definitely want him to come back and see what he can do against other opponents. But Majima on this night just crushed him and in impressive fashion and finished him to kick off the card, the Super RIZIN 3 epic event. So it was great. It was a great bout.
Right, of course. Now, come to think of it, since we pretty much talked about everything that took place on the card, and Todd, I'm sorry if this spoiled it for you, but after talking about all this with us, do you think this is giving you a good preview of what's to come, or do you think that we pretty much spoiled it all for you?
No. I mean, I think, like I said, a lot of the stuff that I've been doing my shows talking about like certain things that are happening rather than necessarily events. But if I'm gonna do a show like this, I'll probably have to watch right at the same time you guys do, and kind of. But I was looking at the last fight you guys were talking about, like a Majima. He's from Shuto. I've always had a higher opinion of Shuto than Pancrase. Shuto. Back when, in my opinion, in the early 2000, late 90s, early 2000s, I think Shuto was the best promotion in the world. Even though Pride was bigger, Shuto was very well organized. I felt the referees were the best, Ogata and Suzuki. The way they ran their promotion, A class, B class, C class. They also had the amateur tournament. If you won that one, you could go to professional. It was very organized, almost like boxing. They had a foundation where guys could develop. And the best guys in Japan at that time came from Shuto. Kid Yamamoto, Takanori Gomi,
Anderson Silva.
No, I'm talking
beat
about
Sakura.
he did, but I'm talking about the Japanese fighters.
Oh, okay. You're talking
The
about
most
strictly
talented
Japanese
fighters
fighters.
that Pride had outside of Sakuraba and some of those guys, especially when Bushido started. It was Gomi, it was Sakurai, it was Kid Yamamoto fighting in K1 and Dream. God, what was the big, huge, muscular guy? Kawajiri.
Kawajiri.
These guys all came,
Crusher.
the Tetsuji Kawajiri. These guys all came from Shuto, and so Pancrase, while it's been around a long time, I wouldn't say it's been a generator of the best of the best. There have been some good ones. Don't get me wrong. There's been some guys that are good from Pancrase, but I think Shuto has always been the best developer of talent, Japanese talent in MMA.
Do you think that nowadays, how do you think they stack up to, like, nowadays I think that would be Deep. Deep seems like they're the main feeder or main smaller league regional show in Japan for the big show of the Epic RIZIN. They seem to get a lot of guys from Deep, and then shows like Shuto and Pancrase only get a couple guys from.
That's because I feel like their fighters, same with shoot boxing in this regard, their fighters have a lot of loyalty to Shuto. It's almost like a cult type loyalty. They have a lot of devotion to Shuto. When you go to a shoot boxing show or Shuto show, a lot of the ushers are fighters from shoot boxing or Shuto. They're working the events as ushers, or it's almost like a family thing. When you go in there, you're going to see when you go to Crockwin Hall and you go up the elevator and you go into the lobby, you're going to see all the biggest stars in Shuto there. And it's not like they come and mob these guys. People just ignore them. It's almost like a family thing. You go to Crockwin Hall and fighters that would get mobbed in Pride or RIZIN, nobody says a word to those guys.
Well, and that's probably why Striker Queen Reina, after every fight, no matter if she wins or loses, she always does the thing where she counts to 3 and then goes Shuto. Jay Chris probably knows exactly what the Japanese way is to talk about it.
Yeah,
Here, Jay Chris, say it real quick. You know it in Japanese.
Oh, right. Ich, ni, san, Shuto.
Well, that's what Inoki always did in Pride. He said Ich Nissan da. Da. Yeah, that was his thing. 1, 2, 3.
And Striker Queen Reina does that for Shuto every single bout.
Right.
They have the crowd.
They have a big loyalty to these promotions that they came from. They fight in RIZIN, but they represent Shuto or shoot boxing or whatever.
Yes.
And it's hard for them to leave because of that. They feel like they're they're a core of this promotion. They don't want to necessarily walk away from it. They feel a lot of guilt, I would say.
And also another promotion that is coming up as like a feeder, a regional promotion, is Makiru's Breaking Down. Was it Jay Krish? Which opponent was it? Was it Hiroya from the Yaman fight, or
it was? I mean, Hiroya ended up losing
no,
to
Kokoro? Yeah, but Hiroya was from Breaking Down, which is another that gets millions of views. That's Makiru's promotion, gets millions of views on YouTube in Japanese, and they're I mean it's I love the relationship that the Epic Rising has with all these smaller regional Japanese promotions. And Todd, like you're saying, the Shuto and shoot boxing, I love how it's like a family atmosphere there, and that's great to hear that they're loyal. And Striker Queen Reina is a perfect example of that. She does the Inoki countdown and does Shuto. She goes Shuto. It gets the whole crowd to say it, everything. So it just really shows that she'll never give up her love for the shoot boxing organization that made her a star. But I mean, it's just I mean, I love how these promotions are sending guys up to the big stage, which the Epic Rising is. And I love that that Majima is from Shuto, and they're still. I mean, I love that they're picking from all these different leagues, including Breaking Down, and bringing them to the big stage. And it makes me happy to see that. I hope I know it'll continue, but I just love to see that happen.
Well, I think RIZIN, that's kind of the. I remember Zach Buscapa. I'll have to bring him on your show sometime. But he was saying RIZIN, a little bit different from Pride, is when Pride finally got, once they signed, their various stars or whatever, they were fighting for Pride. But I think now RIZIN's taking more of the thing. This is the platform. You guys can come here and fight on this platform. We're not going to lock you in necessarily. It's a platform for you to showcase yourself from all the different promotions. That's kind of the way they're looking at it, rather than we're going to get all the best guys and only fight for us.
Yeah, that's why they call it a federation. RIZIN Fighting Federation. Remember when it first started, it had the banners of all these different promotions of the guys that were coming there to fight for them. So that's all. You're absolutely right, Todd. That has always been the philosophy behind Sakakibara-san and Shingo Kasuagi for the Epic RIZIN Fighting Federation, is to make it a federation of all these different promotions for their best guys to showcase on the big stage. The Pride 2.0 big stage is what they're building into, which hopefully culminate in next year in 2025. I just can't, man. It was so great hearing from you, Todd.
Culminate at the end of this year.
Well, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree. But what I'm thinking about is the massive free agency period that's going to happen next year. So that could just, I mean, like you were saying, your timeline, it'll start at the end of the year. Let's put it that way. That's the kickoff, is the New Year's Eve collaboration mega event, or they're trying to one-up this Super RIZIN 3 mega event, and that'll give them momentum going into 2025 of the most massive free agency period we've seen. Go ahead.
When it comes down to it, I think that the whole free agency period is probably going to start after the PFL crowns new champions. I don't know if it's going to be now officially on Thanksgiving weekend or the first couple of weeks in December this year, when the PFL is going to have their finale, because they can't do it on New Year's Eve because of the ESPN commitment to college football. But still, though, I think that the true free agency period is going to start after the PFL finishes their domestic run for this year.
Well, I think it's going to be when they fold Bellator. I remember Todd's reporting said that they're going to do this season, this year of Bellator shows, and then next year it's only going to be a couple, like maybe one or two shows, and they're going to fold it into PFL. And they're doing that to finish the contracts of all the Bellator guys to bring them over to the PFL. But they're not going to be able to bring them all of them. There's even divisions that the PFL doesn't have, entire divisions of fighters that the PFL does not have, that they won't bring over. I'm telling you guys, next year,
they're probably gonna pick and choose the fighters they want, and then whatever else they can't afford to get or can't hold a division for, they're just gonna get rid of. Because
not if those fighters are at the end of the contract. Those fighters would have the right to look anywhere.
Exactly. But
Right.
still,
They can't pick them.
much kicked me off of the media calls because they're saying, "Oh, we got so many people from all over the world who want to talk to these fighters." Bull fucking shit. First of all, second of all, it comes down to all these fighters that they bought, that they not only signed the contracts over from Bellator to the PFL and vice versa, they can't legitimately keep them all because they don't want to be seen as a monopoly like the UFC.
Remember, you got guys out there like Usman Nurmagomedov, Aaron Pico. These guys they got some outstanding fighters in Bellator. That
Yeah. And the Fader team guys, Vadim Nemkov.
Yeah.
Vadim Nemkov, arguably the best 205-pound fighter right now, besides Pereira and Jiri, right? And he moved up to heavyweight, and he's being successful at heavyweight now. I mean, it's just they have an incredible. Patchy Mix is another one. I mean, sensational. And look at what these Bellator guys have done in the UFC. Michael Chandler has been so sensational that he's about to fight Conor McGregor in one of the biggest money fights of all time. You know, so dude, the smear campaigns against the minor league fighters is BS. And so it's just like, I mean, the latest one is do you see how they flip-flopped on MVP, Michael Venom Page? Mm-hmm. They flip-flopped on him, and now instead of a can crusher and a total can minor leaguer, now he's all of a sudden, once he signed the contract for the UFC, now he's a premier fighter on pay-per-views, and they're just oh god, it's nauseating seeing the flip-flop that they did. But we should have known, because they did the same thing with the Strike Force fighters. Daniel Cormier, perfect example. He's from Strike Force. Now look at him. Now he's totally just a UFC homer, just all about the UFC brand and stuff like that. So just, man, I can't stand that smear campaign shit against all these outside promotions. That's why it's so satisfying seeing Todd, like we were talking about earlier. This is what I was trying to get back to, is talking about the UFC lawsuit news that you have covered, since absolutely sensational on your shows, and what that means for next year's free agency period. We could be seeing actual massive UFC names, maybe even Conor McGregor himself. He's only got 2 fights left. And what if he finishes up one this year against Michael Chandler, which is what I was trying to build into that, talking about Michael Chandler. That's one of them. What if he does the next one is the trilogy with Nate Diaz or something early next year, and then he's a free agent by the end of next year? Especially after this lawsuit, maybe who knows what the concessions will be in the UFC lawsuit? What if they settle before the October date, like Todd was saying? Well, I mean, I can't wait. We should save this for Todd. We're gonna do an MMA conspiracy hour with Todd after this, right? Well, that can be the next show.
The hour, but the JMMA beat as well.
Yeah.
And
yes, that's what I meant.
To think of it, since we're about ready to put a bow on this thing, Todd, do you want to go ahead and shamelessly put yourself over and all the projects that you have?
And I think Jay did a good job of it already. Yeah, I mean, I do a show with Miguel Ederati called the MMA Conspiracy Hour. I think that's kind of our most popular one. And the YouTube that we do it on is a Todd Atkins show. So see my first name, last name show. But yeah, we kind of talk about different subjects, not really about events necessarily, but different topics that we see in the news. Me and Miguel send each other news items that we think sound interesting. And, Miguel's had a long history in MMA. He's promoted over 200 shows with the Bodog fight, Euphoria, the first 7 years at ADCC. He had a promotion called Hook and Shoot that he worked with Jeff Osborne on, who was one of the first guys around the game back then in Indiana. So Miguel has a lot of experience.
I do remember Hook and Shoot, by the way. Sorry for interrupting you. But
yeah, so he's a good resource for talking about. He's got a great MMA mind, I would say. He's still in Costa Rica after the Bodog years. That's where it was at, Costa Rica. He's still there all this time. And so, yeah, I think it's an interesting source. And sometimes we bring some other guys on, like Zach Arnold and people like that.
And then talk about the other show, the JMMA Beat, the
Yeah,
Japanese
of course.
MMA Beat.
Yeah, we try to get whoever. I mean, Jay's on there a lot. Christian's on there a lot. I haven't had a chance to bring some of the other guys. Andrew has been on them, and I'd like to try and get a Zach Buskop or some of these other guys that I know. Some guys that I know that are entrenched in Japan. Ryan Bowe, people like that. Some people that can get some.
Oh, is an in person to talk to.
Yeah, I think Ryan is a good source as far as like talking about things like we used to talk about. Ryan fought in Shuto, obviously, and for a long, long time. And I was at a lot of Ryan's fights from 2002 to 2005. He did a lot for me when I lived there, and so there's a lot of interesting guys that we can bring on these shows, even or Japan MMA Beat that you haven't had yet.
And Andrew Tennyson, who I've talked to before, I'm pretty sure they would love to come onto your show as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and our the Polish correspondent Daniel Zubicki.
Yeah, Daniel, he does a great job. And Carlos, his cousin Giselle, was a reporter here in Tulsa. She was on News 6. She was an anchor woman. So that she said, "Oh, I have a brother. He does MMA. Maybe you want to talk to him." That's actually how I found out Carlos was actually Giselle, the news reporter. Yeah.
Nice. That's great.
But as I'm pretty much putting down in the little chyron below, obviously, those who can check out your shows, they can check them out on Apple Podcasts and Spotify as well.
Well, I used to do a lot of the audio ones, but really now I just do straight YouTube pretty much. It's a lot of work to do the audio ones too. So I would just do straight YouTube. People want to listen to it, then come to YouTube and it's there.
But I mean, I can understand from experience, and I've done this shit for 12 years. Working audio podcast is a pain in the ass, but it's hard. I mean, but it's fun to crank them out every once in a while, And I can totally understand that. And Jay, I already know what you're about to go ahead and do, so have at it.
Yes. Oh, thank you. You can follow me in the Discord, the RIZIN FF Discord. Everybody join there. It's so much fun. I like it better than even Twitter and all those other social media apps because it's not public. We can say what we want, and as long as you don't say like racist stuff or asshole stuff like that. As long as you're we talk about all the fights. We talk about Todd's in there with us. There's so many guys there in the RIZIN Discord, fans Discord. It's I highly recommend it. Come join with us. We watch the fights live. It's just it's a lot of fun. I absolutely love it. You can find me there. And then also on the banner that Jay Krish so nicely put up there, it has my Twitter, my X app address, which is JAYYOLF1. It's misspelled on purpose. That was my original screen name from way back in the day on the Yahoo message boards in like 05 or 06, whenever it was I started commenting first. And it's just, that's how you know it's me from back in the day. And it's easier to search because back then there was like a million other J Wolves. And I just didn't want to be J Wolf 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, million. So I just said, okay, I'm going to misspell it. It's easy to search. Easy. So that's why. But I'm going to be switching that soon because I found out on Twitter that you can change your @ and you won't lose followers. So I'll get around to that eventually. But for right now, that's where you can follow me. And if you're a real person, I'll follow you right back. I follow back on Twitter. And also right here on Focus Fights, make sure you guys like and subscribe to Focus Fights and Focus Fights Audio. Fantastic run by Jay Krish Gary right here. One of the bros, been doing it for a long time. And like I said, make sure you check out a lot of these interviews. So the one I love was the one with Shingo Kasawagi. That's what we're talking about, saying instead of soccer kicks, we say grounded kicks from now on to help the legalization effort that's underway. That was an exclusive to Jay Krish and Focus Fights. And I love being a guest on these shows with Jake Christian, the Focus Fights, everybody. And Todd, it was so great to talk to you, brother. I mean, we're talking about doing a JMMA beat, Japanese MMA beat here coming up. We're trying to coordinate with people to get all those guests that you were talking about having on. So look for that in the near future. And also with Jay Krish and Focus Fights, we're talking about doing a possible top 10, top 20 of the things about the Epic RIZIN that we love so much show. Kind of like the We Are RIZIN podcast did with, King CeeLo. So look for that in the future, possibly. Also, I'd also appear sometimes with Teep to the Junk, another good friend of the show that we both have been on, Jay Krish. So I might be on, since there was a Manny Pacman boxing match. I haven't talked to him and confirmed it yet, but possibly I can get Teep to do a show as well, especially since there was a boxing match of Manny Pacquiao and Ryan Garcia was on there, all that news. So possibly look out for that as well. But for sure, watch for the Japanese MMA beat with Todd Atkins. I believe that's the one that could be coming next. So keep your eye open for that. And just with that, I just can't thank y'all enough for talking to me about these fights for 3 hours. Now this is the long form review show that I love doing. I could go for another couple hours, another 3 hours, Jay Krish, if you wanted to. That's how much I love talking about this with you guys, especially with Todd being on. So
I think
just
you guys
thank
would
you
like
for having
having.
me.
I think you guys would like having Zach, because not Arnold, but Zach Biscoff, who's in our
Yeah, Zach
Instagram. Zach is a guy who he speaks French, Japanese, Portuguese. He's done a lot of translation for a number of these events. He goes to most of them. So I think as an embedded guy, he'd be a good resource for you guys. So I'm going to try to work hard to get him on.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'd love talking to him. I would love talking to him on a show, picking his brain and all that. And hopefully he's on the Japanese MMA beat. You can get him on the Japanese MMA beat, Todd. That'd be great. So everybody look for me there. And just, again, can't thank you enough, Jay Krish, for having me on doing the show. And Todd for being a fantastic guest with incredible topics talking about with you. Just absolutely loved it. And I look forward to continuing those conversations on either both the MMA Conspiracy Hour and the Japanese MMA beat, or on another show right here. Come back on Focus Fights Audio. So just and thank you all to the fans for tuning in and listening to us rant for 3 hours.
Basically saying to us, top 3 fat guys. Hey, man.
I ain't fat. Hey, man, what the heck? I'm just big. I'm a natural heavyweight. Come on.
Well, it's a weight. But still, though, I like the bald gamer one. Is he talking about me?
I'll try to improve. I think he's talking about me and my headset.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. I'll try to get down and wait for you. I'm almost 50, man. I trained for like 20 years, like I was in the military and all that stuff. Trust me, I've had to do all that for a long time.
I can totally understand, Todd.
But I do. He's right. I need to get back into.
But still,
one
though,
of these days, man.
Yeah, but still, though, I ain't fat, motherfucker.
None of us are. Come on.
I am. No. He's right. I'm too heavy.
Still, though, if I can close out this show, y'all can follow me in the links that you see in the description of this podcast below. One thing, though, on my Twitter account, I not only on my Twitter account, but on the Focus Fights Twitter account, I put out the fact that I'm basically taking part in this radio contest for a local sports radio station in town. I should be getting more details about this thing tomorrow, now that I basically have heard about it. And of course, Todd is saying telling Marks the Goon check out his show. But still, though, on the Focus Fights Twitter page, there is a link to a video that I put out on this very YouTube channel yesterday, putting over my sports talking skills for a radio contest that I am going to be a part of, and hopefully we'll get more details out within the next 24 to 48 hours. If not, then I guess it's their loss. I don't really give a shit, because that station has a pretty poor track record of treating their employees with respect. But still, though, point of the matter is, I should be getting more info on that contest by the close of business tomorrow at the time of this recording. Either way, if y'all want to check out more what I have to say, what Focus Fights has to do, and all this other stuff, you can either check me out in the links below or check out the RIZIN Fighting Fans Discord. And also, don't forget to check out what Andrew Benjamin has in store, check out what Izzy Doa has in store, and check out what Combat Sports Today has in store. But
yes, I'm glad. Thank you for shouting them out. And let's give a shout out to Aisha from the City Life Project as well. Another fantastic show that talks about the Epic RIZIN Fighting Federation as well. So I want to give them all a shout out. Combat Sports Today, Izzy Doa, or the entire CST Today family, the City Life Project with Aisha and Drew from the We Are RIZIN podcast, all the people that Todd Atkins was talking about, all of Todd Atkins' shows, and all your Focus Fight shows, Jay Krish. Everybody, give a shout out to everybody to end the show.
Without further ado, I think it's time to put this thing in park and get in the house. So until the next hear from you, I mean, for Jay, for Todd, I am the Chillmeister, Chris Gary, saying peace, my peoples, in one love world. Protect yourself at all times. Keep fighting because you never know who might hear your story. And in the case of those who forgot just how much the #2 promotion in combat sports today rocks, and is not some damn Saudi shit show that happened in Los Angeles 24 hours ago, why don't you let Lenny Hart remind y'all what we all about?
Pride never die. Pride is RIZIN. Peace.
See y'all next time.